Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. Please be seated. Now, I trust everyone's had a moment to read our acknowledgement to our First Nations friends and neighbors. This, as you may know, is a bit of an exciting night. We have an important issue for our community on our public hearing, but it's also, excuse me for one moment. You see, it takes real dedication to be a member of council. And it's Scott's birthday. So will you join me in wishing him happy birthday? Now, for Scott's birthday, there is one request he's made that we can all accommodate. And that is, he does not want to know the score in the game. So I ask every one of you, don't look at your phones, and please don't tell us the score. He's recording it at his house, and you're welcome to have a piece of cake if you all are good. And just before we begin, we have a public hearing, but I've got to call a short council meeting because we have a senior member of our staff here who it would be just incredibly unfair to make her wait until whenever we're finished to present our financial report, which we need to do to meet all of our requirements. But before I call on Ms. Gordon to do, sorry, Ms. Gordon's here. Yeah, she's over there. Gentlemen, can we make space for Ms. Gordon? Sorry, it's just not fair to have a senior member of staff have to wait until the wee hours of the morning to present something. But before I do that, and I'm happy to recognize in the audience tonight a few people who are very involved with the Place for Sport. And you may know that that's the replacement up at West Van Secondary, and I recognize Mr. Jeff Jobson, and I saw Barbara Hunter here as well. I know they were very and Joanne Wood is here. Hello, Joanne. I thought council has decided and we're able to release some rather good news on this project. It is moving along extremely well. It is certainly on schedule. We hope it'll be ahead of schedule, but it's also remarkably under budget. And this being under budget means that we now have enough funds to proceed with washrooms at the facility, which were not in the original plan. There will also be a new throwing cage built at the all-weather field at Ridgeview School, and there will be aluminum bleachers that will sit on top of the current cement bleachers. All of that will be done because we are well under budget. So it's a bit of a good news, and I would just like to thank all of those people who have, and our school board, because we had to amend some agreements about maintenance and things. So we also thank our school trustees who have worked so cooperatively to see that project proceed. So thanks to the people involved. Thank you. I'm going to call the council meeting to order, and I'm going to just move very quickly to Ms. Gordon's two items. The first is the statement.
We need to take the agenda.
Yes, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as written? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Yes, actually, I am going to approve the agenda with an amendment.
Okay.
As well as the order of this thing. The amendment will be to add the LAP bylaws. Seconder?
To the agenda?
Of the regular council meeting.
Okay. So there's a mover, Councillor Snyder, seconded. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gambioli.
Maybe the mayor could explain what that means to the public, please.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson has added, depending on if we get through the public hearing on the LAP tonight, she has added to the motion the consideration there would be a number of bylaws coming out of it. One is the zoning bylaw, and the other is the OCP amendments. So by adding this to the agenda, depending on how late this meeting goes, those could be considered later this evening. And that was moved by Councillor Snyder. Councillor Gambioli.
So in other words, what that means is that
The volume's a bit high.
we would be adding the decision on this public hearing to the agenda at tonight's meeting, after the public hearing, as opposed to not making the decision tonight, which has been published for the public, and the rest of us thinking that we would be making this decision 2 weeks from now. So in other words, the decision would be made tonight instead of 2 weeks from now.
Thank you. That is correct. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, the motion is carried.
And contrary, please.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli, contrary. And could I move Ms. Gordon? Ms. Gordon, you're ready to go?
Yes, Your Worship. Pascal, can I run my, from here, or do I have to? Sorry. Can I from here? I don't see it, sorry.
Just get that shared for you.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your patience. This is a requirement that we have to get through this item tonight, and if the meeting went really late, might not get through it. So here we go. Ms. Gordon.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is the 2023 annual report for the District of West Vancouver. Page down. I have an overview, the consolidated financial statements, some supplementary information, and some links to reports on the website where this report will be posted. Based on your request, Your Worship, I'm going to make this very brief. I'm going to go through it as quickly as may be. I first want to go through a few of the things that we did accomplish in 2023. There were numerous things, which are all of which are listed in the annual report. I've picked out just some of the highlights. We finalized the Cypress Village Development Plan. There was intensive work on the Ambleside Local Area Plan, culminating in the presentation that's going to be made tonight. There were responses to provincial housing targets. For the local economy, we supported the boardwalks and patios in the Dunderave business area. We continued the electrification of the district fleet, worked with Port Royal merchants on property crime, implemented cannabis retail applications process and approvals, and worked to develop programs to encourage vibrant and active local streets with the Business Association. For the climate change and nature, which was a particular focus, we created the new Environment Committee, completed wildfire fuel management, continued the North Shore Jump on a Heat Pump program, which has been very successful in this community. There was adoption of Step 4 of Provincial Energy Step Code and a new Zero Carbon Step Code for all new houses. A tree planting program with the schools in the district was initiated. Provincial compliance reporting as a low carbon fuel supplier, so we will receive carbon credits, which we will then be able to sell and put the money in our environmental fund to support more work. And received a federal grant to complete the electrification of the heating system at the library. We enhanced active transportation through additional bike lanes, completed upgrades to bus stops and bike upgrades on 31st, Mathers, Thompson, Crescent, and Westmount Road, and installed new rapid flashing beacons to improve pedestrian safety at crosswalks, and enhanced accessibility at the library through accessible book drops and an exterior vertical lift to access the upper parking lot and courtyard. We enhanced cybersecurity with multi-factor identification for all district staff with remote access, completed a certificate of recognition safety audit process, which resulted in a rebate from Workers' Compensation Board, and negotiated new collective agreements with 3 district employee groups, completed the restoration of and reopened the Ferry Building Gallery, completed the sale of 3 Brissenden lots to help fund acquisition of remaining 2 waterfront properties on the foreshore, acquired waterfront property at 1448 Argyle, which will be converted into a park, reopened the Horseshoe Bay Park with a new playground, washrooms, seating, and picnic areas, began construction of a place for sport, initiated a program to allow leash dogs on the Centennial Seawalk, completed the storm damage repairs and reopened the Ambleside and Dunderave piers, reinitiated the Seniors Activity Center dinner service on Thursday evenings at the Gardenside Cafe. These are just a few of the things that are reported on in the annual report, Your Worship, and I think it speaks very well for the community that all of these things were accomplished. I'm going to skip over the operational achievements. These are things that were done to make things more efficient and effective, and they were also important, but I'm just going to skip over them in the interest of time and move on to the financial statements. We have our statement of financial position of operations, our net financial asset and cash flows. In the statement of statement of financial position, our financial position improved by $51 million. That was financial assets increased by $37 million and non-financial assets by $14 million. Non-financial assets are our infrastructure assets, Your Worship. In our operations, we achieved an operational surplus over budget of about $30 million, which was made, and that operational surplus allowed us to show a change in net financial assets of $37,438. And then this is the slide I do want to spend a moment on. Our unappropriated surplus is now a surplus. For quite a few years, the District of West Vancouver actually had an unappropriated deficit, and we have climbed out of the deficit position, and we are now in a surplus position. I have been asked, actually, what surplus would be appropriate, and actually the best practice is about 15% of taxes. So we have a ways to go before we are in the best practice area, but we are going now in the black, and we are going in the right direction. And I'm very happy to report that to Council and the community. This is just a graph showing that West Vancouver's total financial assets are not great compared to most of the others in the Lower Mainland. But as I say, we're going in the right direction, and we are climbing up this graph, which I think strengthens the district's financial position and gives us much more flexibility and resiliency in terms of completing Council's strategic goals. In terms of supplementary information, we have a graph here showing that West Vancouver's population is increasing, not by a great amount, but it is going up, and I think we can expect that to continue. We have actually recovered the business license position and are now have more business licenses being issued than we had before the pandemic, which is certainly heartening to see. In terms of property tax collection, we had, this is very much affected by assessments, and as assessments went down in 2020 and 21, property tax collections went down as well. And then as they have climbed, they've gone up again, particularly this orange bar, which is the taxes collected for other jurisdictions. West Vancouver's been hit fairly hard by that additional school tax, which you can see on this graph. This is a graph showing cost of providing services per resident per day, public safety being the greatest at $2.54. In total, it's about $9.99 a day that is being provided for all of these services, including sewer and water. And these are just some financial ratios and indicators. They are all positive, which I'm happy to report. Our taxes to total revenue are in the best practice range. And in terms of links, the entire annual report can be found on the district's website at the link provided here, or just by going on the website, there'll be a link there. And our report on our natural assets is also provided, and our climate action program report is also provided. So all of this information is there for the public to peruse at their leisure. And if there are any questions or anyone would like a printed copy of the annual report, they could please just ask us, and we'd be very happy to produce it. But we no longer actually produce printed copies because most everyone is now comfortable looking at things online. But again, if anybody would like a printed copy, then we'd be happy to produce it for them.
Ms. Gordon, thank you so much.
That's it, Your Worship.
Any questions from members of council? If not, I'm going to ask Councillor Snyder to make a motion, please.
I'd like to recommend that the 2023 annual report for the District of West Vancouver be approved.
Councillor Lambert. Thank you. Discussion? Question? All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Thank you. One other quick item, 9.1 on the agenda, the Statement of Financial Information. Ms. Gordon.
Your Worship, we're going to have to ask for an amended motion respecting the Statement of Financial Information. And the amended motion is that, as described in the report dated June 14th, 2024, the 2023 Statement of Financial Information be approved for submission to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing as amended by removing the Ambleside-Dunderray Business Improvement Levy of $500,000 from the schedule of payments to suppliers of goods and services, which is on page 46 of the report, and inserting it into the Statement of Payments of Grants or Contributions, which is on page 55. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder. Thank you. Councillor Watt. Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Thanks so much, Ms. Gordon. And we'll adjourn the council meeting and now turn to the public hearing. If I could ask our corporate officer, who would like to help us go through the legalities of...
Is this on? I can use this.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and read the public hearing procedure. Council is convening this public hearing to consider and receive submissions regarding proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985-2018, amendment bylaw 5291-2024, and proposed zoning bylaw 4662-2010, amendment bylaw 5338-2024 regarding the Ambleside Local Area Plan apartment area. Anyone who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaws will be heard and or may provide a written submission either in person or via email to correspondence@westvancouver.ca. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. Council members may ask questions of you following your presentation, but council's function during this public hearing is to listen to the views of the public, not to debate the proposed bylaws. After the public hearing has concluded, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations. Your only opportunity to comment on the proposed bylaws is during the public hearing. Council is not permitted to receive further submissions once council has closed the public hearing. Council has received documents which are available for the public to view. A hard copy of these may be obtained from myself during the public hearing. These documents can also be viewed online at westvancouver.ca/news/notices. Please note that the online copy of the documents will not include items received after noon today. To maintain order and ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, here are the rules of procedure. A speakers list has been established. For those attending in person, you may place your name on the list at any time throughout the public hearing. If you are speaking from prepared remarks, council requests that a copy be provided to the corporate officer. To participate via WebEx, please phone 604-925-7004 and provide your name and telephone number to staff who will add you to the speakers list. When it is your turn to address council, staff will allow you to unmute your microphone and turn on your webcam in order to provide you with your public input opportunity. Please note that staff will not be in a position to provide you with a specific time slot when you register to speak, so we ask that participants who wish to address council be available for the duration of the public hearing. Council requests that you please begin your remarks by providing your name and municipality of residence. If you are speaking on behalf of some other person or organization, council requests that you please identify the name of that person or organization. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes and to the subject of the proposed bylaws. Please be respectful to others. After everyone has spoken once, you will have an opportunity to speak subsequent times to provide additional information. Please follow the process outlined above to be re-added to the speakers list. If you have any concerns about the rules of the hearing, please address your comments to the chair. And for tonight, council has received 2 staff reports on the proposed bylaws and 167 written submissions. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, we're going to turn it over for a staff presentation. Have you got it set up so that we could deal with the zoning bylaw amendment first? Would that be possible? Or
through the mayor, no, the bylaws are set up to be considered together, but I mean, council could, through the proceedings, I suppose, separate them.
Okay. We'll wait for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship, and all members of council, and particularly the public. Tonight is a public hearing, so I'm very pleased to see so many folks with us. So yes, as expected, this is Ambleside Local Area Plan, or LAP, public hearing presentation. I'll begin just by clarifying the area that is in question. So it is the area marked as blue. This has been described as the apartment area stream of the LAP, and pending resolution of this stream, the LAP process will move on to the commercial area in pink and the neighbourhood area in yellow. A more historical map, this area was actually established in 1959, and as you can see from the outline in red, it's generally reflected what was put in place 65 years ago, and I think the overarching objective in what's in front of council tonight is to modernise those regulations, and to do so in two ways. So there are two bylaws. The zoning bylaw regulates existing uses, so in layman's terms, that's something a property owner can do without needing to go to council for permission, if you like, whereas the OCP, or Official Community Plan bylaw, is the future-oriented piece. It doesn't change any existing development rights, but it does provide policy that can guide future zoning decisions. And I'll speak to each of these bylaws in turn. So the zoning bylaw, to begin with, as mentioned, this is about existing regulations, and really the intent here is to support existing buildings. So the subject lands here relates to the RM1 and RM2 zones. You can see these shaded on the map. And I think the first point here is that really this comprises the vast majority of the apartment area, in fact in the order of around 80% of it. And what those buildings are, there's a little schematic diagram here. These are buildings we're familiar with. It's around 85 existing mid and high-rise concrete buildings, typically built in the 60s and 70s. The amendment in front of council and subject of this public hearing is to increase the floor area ratio, or FAR, so the amount of permitted floor area, in a building from 1.75 to 2.0. And to be clear, that is actually a very modest increase, and it is not to incentivize redevelopment. It's not sufficient to enable that. Really, the purpose here is to actually facilitate reinvestment into existing buildings. So examples of that would be, should buildings have existing amenity rooms and they would like to convert that, there would be sufficient floor area for them to do so. Or should they wish to enclose a balcony for weather protection or to increase indoor living space, then again, there would be sufficient floor area for them to do that. We do have a couple of examples on the screen where this has previously occurred. So on the left, an amenity room was converted. On the right, you can see some enclosed balconies. And again, the intent here is really about flexibility. Any such projects would still need to meet both building code, fire code, etc., but it would remove the burden of owners who might wish to pursue these directions from having to also go through a zoning process or a rezoning process. The second bylaw, as mentioned, is the Official Community Plan. So this is the future-oriented piece. It's our long-term vision for the community. And the intent here with the LAP and the apartment area in particular is really to try to land some of those district-wide higher-level objectives in this neighbourhood at the local scale. So one slide on what an OCP does and does not do, so its purpose and effect. So the reason we have an OCP is we're looking to guide that long-term change for it to be area-wide, context-specific, so that there is a template in place and that any change can be incremental but cohesive in terms of playing its part within that broader template. So what that really means is that future development would be controlled as opposed to what we have heard from some members of the community in terms of spot rezoning. Like it would not be unexpected. People would understand what could happen, and in terms of the what, this is really about residential housing uses, and you'll see in the policies that are proposed a very broad continuum, so starting with the more affordable elements, non-market rental, market rental, moving into what I'm describing in quote marks as hybrid elements, so that will be things like housing co-ops or rent to own, also seniors housing, and then ownership options, be they strata apartments or strata townhouses. Perhaps the most important question, how does an OCP work? So OCP is policy. It doesn't change existing zoning, but it does position council to review, consider, and make decisions about development applications. So to be very clear, when council is considering amending the OCP to have policies, council is not approving any given site's actual redevelopment. That would come through a future rezoning decision. And then in terms of the where, there are actually about there are 7 categories of lands that we think might redevelop. That's actually relatively few within the 60-acre apartment area, but it's because that area's context is largely set. As I mentioned, it's mostly RM1 and RM2 existing mid and high-rise buildings. Because of that, we don't think those buildings will redevelop, so we are looking for a relatively limited range of opportunities. We think there are 7, so there are 4 opportunities where we can create some opportunity for regeneration, adding some diversity, doing what we can for affordability within the apartment area. And we also think there are 3 locations on the edges of the apartment area where we can work with better transitions in a way that introduces a wider range of housing choices. And I'll walk through these 7 things. So in terms of regenerating within, so in map form, within the apartment area, we have a handful of age-restricted sites. So by that I mean senior living, and that could be private, that could be non-profit, that could be senior government. We also have a handful of sites where what they have in common is that they are all lower-rise wood frame buildings that are surrounded by existing mid- and high-rise concrete buildings. Shown in green on the southwestern side, so south of Bellevue and Argyle, we have a series of lots that what they have in common is they're very narrow. They're typically long and thin, as well as being waterfront oriented. And we also have 3 much larger sites. They're rental sites, and they're distinct in that they're 2, 3, sometimes 4 times as large as most of the apartment sites. So what's proposed for these 4 categories or 4 opportunities to regenerate? For the existing senior sites, this is really about supporting our aging demographics. So the median age today in Ambleside is actually 65. So as we plan 10, 20, 30 years into the future, our community will age, as will the existing seniors housing stock, and we want to make sure it has the opportunity to expand and actually provide housing for those who may need it in the future. For those low-rise wood frame sites surrounded by existing concrete mid and high-rise, the proposal is to enable the renewal of ownership opportunities at a similar scale to what surrounds those sites. And you'll notice here the proposed height range is broad, between 6 and 14 stories, and that's really to acknowledge that the surrounding scale is also varied. Regarding those narrow lots on the waterfront, today they're mostly duplexes or fourplexes, so here the recommendation is really just to also allow townhouse forms of redevelopment, so that would be a 3-story form of development. And then regarding those 3 large lots with existing rental buildings, because they're large lots, they do have the ability to accommodate an infill building on those sites, and the intent here is to use that infill opportunity as a way to secure in perpetuity the existing rental buildings on site. Regarding the proposed 3 modest expansions to the apartment area, the first is the 1800 block of Marine. You can see that this block really joins the western apartment area on Bellevue and Argyle to the eastern or central eastern portion on Duchess and Esquimalt. At the top northern edge of the apartment area, directly abutting it, West Vancouver actually owns a few lots adjacent to the apartment area. And then spread throughout, there are 4 community or public use sites. So the one in the very center of the screen is the Legion, and the 3 to the left of screen or the western area are all places of worship. In terms of what's proposed, for the 1800 block of Marine, this block already allows for the option of street-level retail or the option for 100% residential use. So the focus here is on maintaining that optional street-level retail, but also providing a much broader range of residential uses. So that could be strata townhouses, live-work within the existing 4-story parameter, adding a potential story to 5 stories to enable rents to own. And then in a mid-rise 6 to 8 stories format to provide opportunities for those uses that are harder to achieve, so market rental, seniors housing, or a combination of strata with 30% of the floor area dedicated to below market rental. And what we're trying to capture here is really the fact that it's very supportive of nearby businesses to increase residents here, and it's very conducive for things like seniors who may wish to have access to transit. It's close to the library as well as shops and services, and really increase the potential customer base, but also the potential local labor force with those rental and non-market rental options. Regarding the district-owned lands, there would be a separate and very diligent process required to address any leasing or disposition of those lands. So that would be a future process, but what we are suggesting through the OSPI amendment is that this would be an appropriate location for mid-rise apartment use, with council to determine the exact tenure and market mix. And then for those 4 community use and public use sites, we've provided options that could enable new housing and or new community uses. So that could be strata at 4 stories, also at 4 stories, strata with slightly higher FAR if there is a re-provided new public use space. It could be rental at 6 stories, or if there's a way to combine rental and new public use, or strata and 30% of the floor area for below market rental, then also at 6 stories, but at a slightly higher density. So we have, really worked with the community in looking to respond to their desire to understand what these policies could look like. And I've italicized the word might. This is very much a hypothetical exercise, but it's looking to respond to that idea that any redevelopment should be undertaken within context. So there is a full appendix showing a number of illustrations. I'll just provide 3 in the presentation. But here we're in the western area, so we're looking northeast. You can see the community centre site, and top of the screen a portion of Memorial Park. All the existing buildings are shown in white or grey, so you can see the existing mid and high rises that we do not expect to change on Argyle and Bellevue. But you can also see in different colours the policies I've described. So in yellow, opportunity to provide infill on those larger rental sites. In green, waterfront-oriented townhouses. In purple and pink, the opportunity to redevelop on site both seniors and new strata ownership opportunities, and then in blue, repurposing existing community use sites to achieve both new public space and new housing in this illustration. Moving to the central area, so in this instance we're looking southwest. In the background you can see existing high-rises on Bellevue, and in the foreground you can see the apartment buildings existing today on Duchess and Esquimalt. In the distance you can see one of the examples of the rental infill, again in yellow. The darker blue is the Legion, but the real focus here is the lighter blue. This is the 1800 block, which, as I mentioned, an opportunity to provide more housing to join these 2 apartment areas and really support a compact, more vibrant village, which would be to the east or left of those light blue buildings. And then the third image, so here we're looking at the eastern area. So this would be as if we were looking towards Lionsgate's Bridge. You can see in the background the Grosvenor building, just to situate folks. In the orange-brown color, this is an example of renewing existing strata-owned buildings. So these are former land use contract sites. They could renew to a comparable scale to the existing buildings that surround them. And in the foreground, in green, the use of West Vancouver-owned lands. In yellow, another example of infilling on large rental sites. And in purple, another example of the opportunity to expand seniors housing on site. The purple site here is actually recommended for a lower height than what is already approved and already built, and that's just because we think it has a fairly dramatic and abrupt transition to the existing single family, so we think we can actually increase the floor area, but in a mid-rise format, so that there's a softer transition and a long-term, deeper supply of seniors housing for our community. Another question that staff have heard over the preceding year or so is would all of this happen at once? And the short answer is no. I'd really encourage folks to think of the OCP as that long-term, area-wide cohesive document that future decisions can be situated within. So again, I'll reiterate, if Council chooses to approve an OC policy, it is not approving any given site's redevelopment. The policies do include heights and FARs, so the measure of floor area, the density. They are all up to, and they may not be achieved on any given site. No future development is automatically approved on any given site, nor are the maximums. But we have provided these visualizations to show that hypothetical area-wide build-out so that folks do have an understanding of what could happen over the years and, in fact, decades to come. So the reality is that redevelopment would be gradual. In the first part, it would obviously depend on owner interest. Nothing in a policy compels any existing owner to redevelop their site. Their decision to do so would realistically depend on their own interests and market economics. Right now, we certainly find ourselves in a very slow redevelopment environment with high interest rates and high inflation in terms of construction and labor. And also, it would depend on council decisions, as I've mentioned. There are 7 categories of policies that I've described. They cover around 35 sites, so that's actually a very smallish portion of the well-established 60-acre apartment area. The densities and heights that are proposed are economically marginal, so we would expect redevelopment to be gradual. I have been asked how long it would take. The most honest answer is we don't know. So again, in the conditional sense, there are typically ebbs and flows in real estate cycles, but we might see something like an average of 1 redevelopment every year. And if there's 35 sites, that would be 35 years. And then, without wanting to force false symmetry, an area that was established in 1959 could be regenerated as far in the future as 2059. And then the final question that I have been asked is, why is there a range of heights proposed in these policies? And so a simple diagram here that the FAR, the floor area, is the volume, and these 3 diagrams have exactly the same volume. They're the same shape, but they can be achieved with different heights. And when we make those design considerations, there are different results, there are different benefits. So a flat expression laying that shape down on its broader side, it is lower rise, but there is also no open space or very limited open space. If we tilt that onto the long edge, then in the first part, we've introduced more variety, more modulation between building forms, and we've certainly heard that people are not looking for a monolithic experience. They want that variety in height. But we've also notably increased the open space on the site. That could be for vegetation, landscaping, and so on. And then if we flip it on its narrowest edge, so the point, we've really noticeably further increased the open space. And should there be a taller building, it could really be located anywhere on the site in a way to actually maximize view corridors and really shape things that matter to the community. So, long way of saying a range of heights puts council in a position to really make those design considerations. As I said, a policy is not an approval of a development, but through those future development applications, we might find, and council might determine, that in fact different heights and different building forms actually make sense in different sites, and that having a range is supportive of those kinds of future decisions. In reality, what normally happens is that the outcome is actually what I'm terming here bespoke. It will be site-specific, so it could be that the narrower floor plate of the point form is preferred, but that it's not quite as tall, and that those additional stories on top have been redistributed. Again, it's the same volume in this shape, but it's been redistributed to street level. There may be a street where things like townhouses create a certain character, or it may be a housing consideration that the 1 and 2 bedroom units are in the apartment tower and the townhouses are on the street level frontage. So in conclusion, I would like to thank the public in advance for everyone who speaks tonight, but also everyone who's participated throughout this process. We did hold a number of events last year. There was a dedicated town hall on this topic this year. Everything's been very well attended, and at this point we've had really several hundred phone calls, emails, and smaller meetings. And I would also like to place on the record that every interaction with the public has been entirely respectful, and I really appreciate their interest and their desire for dialogue with staff. I think part of being respectful in return is acknowledging that there are different voices. There have been to date. I fully expect there will be tonight. But what staff have tried in very good faith to do is, if we can, we find the common ground. I do think it's fair to say there is a very high level of consensus on many things. So, the desire to have a local area plan in place so that redevelopment is guided, it is contextual, it is managed, it's not unexpected. I think we've heard from the community that there is an awareness that we do want to allow renewal, we do want to allow reinvestment in an apartment area which is 65 years old at this point. And we've also heard that there is a desire for more diverse housing. Where there isn't consensus, it's a form of respect to acknowledge that. I'm aware that not everyone agrees with everything or with every single policy, but we have tried to find that middle ground. So, we've provided a balance across a very broad range of housing priorities. There are members of the community for whom, they would only like it to be about rental or non-market rental. Others who would really like to prioritize ownership. We've tried to provide something across all our full continuum of needs. We've tried to set this up in a way that the change will be gradual. As I said, it's economically marginal. We've tried to illustrate it in a way that we think is contextually appropriate and responsible. And also, I think we can have faith in this and future councils that they will indeed control and guide those future zoning decisions. So in conclusion, the recommendation preceding the public hearing from staff was obviously that council proceed with bylaw consideration. It is consistent with those higher level OCP objectives. It tries to land them in Ambleside's unique local context. Council has directed this work through its strategic plan. We have worked extensively with the public and received a lot of input, which has really helped us last year and this year. We've also been guided by council, that this file has been in front of council a good half dozen times this year, and towards the end of last year, we've responded to all directions we've received and tried to take what we could from the council's previous discussions. And then, of course, subject to what we hear from tonight's public hearing, staff are recommending these bylaw amendments to modernise the apartment area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Chu, could I just ask how many people have signed up to speak so far?
We have approximately 35 names on the list.
Okay, and I guess there's no breakdown. Could I just ask, ladies and gentlemen, a really quick show of hands? As you know, we've got two different items tonight. One is, I don't think controversial, and that is taking the existing apartment buildings and granting them a 2 FSR, which helps legalize balcony enclosures, and that rectifies a lot of problems for a lot of people. And could I just ask a quick show of hands, how many people tonight are here to speak to that item? 1. That's what I thought. 2? Is there 2 people here on that? And are you here to speak to the other bylaw as well, or just that one? The other is the OCP. So there's there. Okay. 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 I just wanted to get some guidance because, as you can see from 1 or 2 people, most people I speak to are really quite happy and grateful that we're fixing this problem of going to the 2 FSR for existing. But I'll turn it over and we'll call for the speakers.
We do need questions from council.
Oh, okay, certainly. Are there any questions from members of council, of staff, before we turn to the public?
Yeah, thank you. I do have one. Since we put on the agenda to possibly vote for this tonight, we've had an abundance of input, which is great, and some suggestions and recommendations that we haven't actually been able to explore with staff. If we make any changes, what are the scope of changes that we can actually make without failing this motion?
Through your worship to Councillor Thompson's question. So once the public hearing is closed, council cannot amend use, so the fact that these are sites in question, the density, so the FAR, or the tenure, where there are policies that include particular options for things like rental versus ownership. Those cannot be changed. The bylaw would need to be defeated, but council can change height, and the bylaw would still stand. So if council wanted to lower heights, for example, they could do that and still adopt the bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder.
Yes. So some of the feedback that we've been having from the community, and I know it's new to everybody, is this Bill 44. And one of the, and maybe you can confirm whether or not this is the case or not. So an adoption of the OCP as presented now means that the public would have no further input on any future developments. Say, for example, if somebody were to come forward with a 14-story building in one of the areas that has been recommended, that because it is in the OCP, it would be precluded from having a public hearing and getting any further public input because it's in the OCP. Is that your understanding?
Through your worship to Councillor Snyder. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question. We certainly acknowledge we find ourselves in a new legislative environment and one in which there's been no interpretation from the courts. The first point I would make is that it would still be a zoning decision. So it still remains true that it would be OCP. It would be for council to actually decide whether they wanted to make the rezoning. Nothing compels you to do so. In terms of public input, it would also still be a development permit. So the area in question is part of what we call a form and character development permit area. Council has to grant a development permit. Council actually controls its own procedures for how they take public input through its development procedures bylaw. Staff's expectation is that council would do what they currently do, which is to require public notification, require public information meetings, and when it is scheduled on a council agenda, to allow the public to speak to it. So I would fully expect that there is still council input through the development permit mechanism, and I would reiterate that nothing in a policy compels council to approve any development or towards any particular form of development. It will be the development permit issuance that actually controls what council felt the appropriate form was, and I expect council would listen to the public in that consideration.
And then they would be able, and then there would potentially be a public hearing then for that building permit.
It would be a regular public open council meeting, as well as before that public information meetings. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Watt.
Yeah, so in your opinion, and I know none of us know what this province is going to do you get the sense that they're not finished with bringing down certain proposed bills, mandated bills? So is it not feasible that going forward they could come and say no public input and no council input? Because they've done a lot of surprising things in the last 12 months.
Through your worship to Councillor Watt.
This is really crystal ball gazing now.
No, well...
Yeah, I mean, as the Mayor said, I mean, fundamentally staff don't know. I can confirm publicly that we have not been given any early indication or any outreach at a staff level to suggest there are further changes. Beyond that, then I can't comment, but I would like to believe that in the same way I've always considered I work for an elected council, that there is a respect for local government and local planning, which is community-based.
Thank you. And I just have one other question. And to clarify, we can accept the density, reduce the heights, but we cannot remove a certain segment. Let's say we feel that there is a certain block that would be better suited for the next stage of the LAP process, as in the commercial zone, and we can't move any item from here to there.
Through your worship to Councillor Watt, yes, my opinion would be that it would be a change of use should any on council wish to remove any of the sites from the proposed bylaw, and that would lead to the bylaw being defeated.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of council? Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience as we go through that process, and now we'd invite members of the public to speak to council. And just given the large number of people who wish to address, normally we like to let people go over time. I'd ask everybody tonight, for Councillor Snyder's sake, to try and keep it to the allotted time. I know. He wants to go home and see the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sager. The first three speakers on the list are Lionel Dodd, George Richards, and David Wu. Lionel Dodd.
Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Thank you for joining us this evening. And you're first up. Right there, please. Thank you, sir.
As the first, you have to allow me to get it set up for other people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Dodd.
The mic looks like it's alive.
It is.
And I've got written comments, so I'm sure that I'm brief as possible within your time limit, Mr. Snyder. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Lionel Dodd. a resident of West Vancouver for 30 years, and a member of St. Stephen's Church, located across from the Recreation Center on 22nd Street. I am speaking in support of the apartment area bylaws as proposed in the Ambleside Local Area Plan today. There has been considerable opportunity for community input. These bylaws have been well thought out, picking up on the comments that you've been making there. They safeguard the appeal of Ambleside, the strategically located densification, numerous housing options, preserved green spaces, waterfront, and community character. St. Stephen's comes out of its 111-year life as a community-focused church. This plan provides for a community that hopefully St. Stephen's will continue to be part of. The Council and Planning Department have done an excellent job of preparing for this day. The time has come to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Thank you, sir.
It gets you off on a positive note, okay?
And that was remarkably brief.
George Richards, followed by David Wu.
Mr. Richards, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Richards.
As I get older, it's a little slower.
Oh, you were fast.
Yeah. But I just made over 90, so I'm still here.
Well done.
My name is George Richards. I've lived in West Vancouver for over 30 years, and I'm currently live on Inglewood and 21st. I would like to thank the mayor and council for the opportunity to address this issue. In my normal life, I worked about 50 years in the forest industry. And in that business, as this business, planning is a big issue. I have discovered over the years that there's two key items in a successful plan. One is clarity of objective, and the second is to ensure stakeholders involved. I commend your group for doing a job looking after those two items. There's no question that housing in some form is a critical issue. I have 4 granddaughters who recently told me, "Gotta move, Grandpa, can't afford it." It's pretty distressing when you hear that kind of news. And of course, this development at St. Stephen's is important in the respect that it does address some housing problems. And St. Stephen's has been in the community, as Lionel said, for over 110 years. And we've been a vital part of our community, and we wish to continue. So we'd like your approval of our project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Thanks very much for joining us.
The next speaker is David Wu, followed by Tellison Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for providing this opportunity to speak to this important housing policy. My name is David Wu, Vice President of Development at Starlight Development, and I am here speaking on behalf of the owners of the Pink Palace at 2222 Bellevue Avenue and the Shoreland Apartments at 2190 Bellevue Avenue. For those who are not familiar with Starlight, we build communities all across Canada and have worked extensively across BC, including Vancouver Island and the North Shore. We believe in creating a positive social and economic impact through delivery of new housing. We would like to share our enthusiastic support for the proposed Ambleside LAP, OCP bylaw amendment, and the proposed ARM1, ARM2 bylaw amendment. We believe that allowing a density increase up to 3.0 through a rezoning on large sites for infill rental alongside existing rental is a step in the right direction in creating much needed housing. Being at the forefront of residential development in Canada, Starlight is dedicated to ensuring the longevity of its existing residences and increasing the availability of quality rental housing across Canada. We believe that infill development, such as the infill opportunity outlined in the Ambleside LAP, is the best way to increase housing stock while preserving existing housing. We strongly support the proposed Ambleside Area Plan as a path forward to enable the creation of new housing while maintaining the charm and character that make West Vancouver such a desirable community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu.
The next speaker is Tellison Glover, followed by Rick Wagner.
Thank you. Sorry, it's Mr. Glover?
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Thanks for joining us.
Your Worship, council members, thank you for affording me the opportunities to speak to you, even if ever so briefly. I am not a resident of West Vancouver. However, I am here today to represent the Diocese of New Westminster and to also to be here to offer my support to the very faithful members of St. Stephen's Anglican Church, and to also speak in favor of the proposed bylaw amendments. Just to say that our diocese is in support, overwhelming support, for the vision that the folks at St. Stephen's Anglican Church have for the redevelopment of their property, but also in favor for the work that they are doing to express their care and concern for addressing the needs of this community here. The diocese feels as if this parish is definitely a strategic partner in the work and vision and plans for this particular area, and feel as if that the work that this council has done on this LAP comes into great alignment with what the diocese is intending to do, and that is to partner with cities across the Lower Mainland to address much need for affordable housing, for repurposing a lot of our, I would say, our aging buildings, all for the sake of creating new gathering spaces and creating spaces, I would say, that really speak to the needs of families, the needs of some of our workforce, the needs of some of our folks that really are the bedrock of many of our communities. And just so that you know, the Anglican Diocese in New West, or rather, the Anglican Diocese of New Westminster is really excited to be a partner, especially for initiatives like this. Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us, sir. Thank you.
The next speaker is Rick Wagner, followed by Susan Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Very glad to
Thanks. Good to
approach
see you.
Nice to see you again as well. I'd like to start off by, first of all, name Rick Wagner, and I've been a West Vancouver resident for roughly 40 years. I'm one of the leads of the Ambleside Tenants Association, and currently living at Villa Maris, commonly known as the Pink Palace. So I would like to just read the correspondence that we've sent to Mayor and Council, in part to provide background for the rest of the people here, and also for those that might be watching at home that couldn't make the meeting. The Ambleside Tenants Association would like to state our strong support for the infill housing bylaw proposal that is outlined as B4.4.5. And just reading off reading that bylaw briefly, it's to allow infill housing alongside the continued rental use of existing units on large sites, up to a total density based on the tenure of the infill. David's gone over this in part, but just briefly, strata up to 2.5, mixed strata and rental or rent-to-own up to 2.75 FAR, and rental or co-op up to 3.0 FAR. And this wording about with appropriate heights to be determined through contextual review of the proposal, I think, is an important one.
In our opinion, this bylaw would provide significant protection for the tenants living in the three properties under question, the Peter Wall Ambleside Building, Shorewood Manor, and Villa Maris Apartments. In our view, it's notable that the 450 apartments in those three buildings account for 28% of all 1,600 purpose-built rental units in the Ambleside area. A bylaw, in our view, that provides such strong protection for 28% of the area's rental units and likely close to 1,000 tenants in those apartments deserves to be supported. Although the ATA's primary focus is the protection of tenants and rental units, we also appreciate that the district is attempting to create managed growth in a range of housing options.
The mic just went off.
Did it? There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Although our primary focus is the protection of tenants and rental units, we also appreciate that the district is attempting to create managed growth in a range of housing options for our community. So in our view, the wording of the bylaw protects tenants. However, it also facilitates the controlled development of new housing that is in keeping with the values inherent in the OCP. So we feel that the proposal is fair and beneficial to tenants, owners, and the District of West Vancouver. Now, a secondary piece that I sent a little earlier today, just to provide a summary of our position. So again, the ATA agrees in principle with the infill development concept as outlined in the proposed bylaw. We see it as a win for tenants, a win for owners, and again, a win for the community. The increase in the availability of different forms of housing, along with increased tax revenue, will be beneficial for the district. We seek three key forms of protection for tenants: the ability to stay in their home building, which would be retained as a condition of the bylaw, being able to avoid a dem eviction, and along with 3 years of living in interim accommodation, and feel that that's a hugely significant benefit to tenants. The continued ability to consult individually or via our association, the Ambleside Tenants Association, with council and planning staff regarding any concerns with respect to the new build, whether they be view impacts, density, or height, would be retained. Even if the public hearing option was precluded due to the proposed increases to the FAR and provincial government legislation, we feel the rights of tenants and all citizens to communicate their concerns, opinions, and ideas to mayor, councillors, and planning remains fully in place. Council and planning staff, in our view, as a third piece, would continue to have the power and ability to effectively manage the approval process for the development of the new build. Last point here, it should be mentioned that if the mayor and council decide that their ability to manage the development of infill housing with the increased FAR levels, 2.5, 2.75, and 3, is not feasible or fully manageable, the Ambleside Tenants Association would also have no objection to the FAR
That's time, sir.
being decreased to the standard 2 level with a requirement for a rezoning application. So whatever option is chosen, the concept of infill housing should be supported as long as the key requirement to retain the current building on site remains as a condition of approval. Apologies for going over.
No, Mr. Wagner, thanks very much,
Okay,
and thanks
you're
for all
welcome.
of your input. Thank you.
Next speaker is Susan Walker, followed by Anne Murray, and then Victoria Jackson.
Thank you.
Susan Walker.
Ms. Walker, thanks for joining us this
Hi,
evening.
thanks, Mayor and Council. My name is Susan Walker. I'm a West Vancouver resident. I'm also on the board of the North Shore Heritage Society. You may know me in my efforts for trying to save a 1912 Dr. William Doctor House and have it barged to Lower Caulfield. I'm also a tour leader of West Coast Modern Week, which celebrates our incredible architectural heritage from 1945 to 1975. Very pleased to say all those tours are sold out, and that is because heritage buildings matter, and people want to see heritage buildings. And this is everything from the 1966 and 1967 St. Stephen's Church, designed by Thompson, Berwick, and Pratt, which is modeled to look like an Indigenous temple. This is also Pink Palace, Villa Maris from 1965, 1963, the circular blue shoreland. These are all remarkable buildings that would look and stand proud, in fact, compete very nicely with any of the buildings in Palm Springs or Miami that are also wildly and worldly celebrated. So I just want to reinforce, and you can see the headline that's coming from me, which is, again, Heritage Buildings Matter. These remarkable buildings are not just on the Heritage Registry, so the very sunny yellow Surfside on 22nd and Bellevue, built in 1971. These heritage buildings are under siege. We know from Vancouver, for example, and these mega projects, mega developments, like the post office, the Hudson's Bay Company, and the changes made there, also pending and uncertainty around the Commodore and the Orpheum, all these from very hungry developers who see a lot of profit in very high market housing. So through this process, we lose our treasured streetscapes, our access to old and new. We need housing stock that reflects old buildings as well as new, old stock for lower prices, both rental and condo, and connections to these older buildings, again, built from 1945 to 1975. This is where architects such as Arthur Erickson, Ned Pratt, B.C. Binning, all celebrated names, and their lesser-known architect peers, should be celebrated and not destroyed. So I beseech Mayor and Council to truly consider Ambleside development in the context of West Vancouver's heritage architecture, to select sites that do not result in their destruction and our permanent cultural and architectural loss. And this would be true of St. Stephen's Church, for example, where alternate infill alternatives, such as being proposed for the Pink Palace, Villa Maris, is a far more attractive and far more powerful creative solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. And we're all looking forward to the West Coast Modern Tour. Thanks for all your efforts on that. Could we move to the next speaker, please?
Anne Murray, followed by Victoria Jackson.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Mayor and Council. I do not have a prepared speech like everybody else. However, as a concerned resident, I am concerned about the building that I live in and the proposed structuring, that it will prevent an enormous amount of light coming into the building that already exists. I'm also concerned about the noise that would come from demolition of the buildings and the effect that a new building would have on our residents. The building I live in, the average age is about 85 years of age. Most of the people are not represented here tonight because they were unaware of the hearing. I'm also concerned about the traffic and the infrastructure in West Vancouver and what all these proposed developments how it will affect the traffic and infrastructure. That's really about all I've got this evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for coming. Thank you. The next speaker, please.
Victoria Jackson, followed by Jacob Isaac.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, thanks for joining us this evening.
Hello, everyone. This is my first thing doing anything like this, so
welcome, and we're happy that you're here.
Yeah, thank you. But my name is Victoria Jackson. I am also a resident of West Vancouver. I'm actually very new here. I grew up in North Vancouver.
Well, you made a wise move.
Yeah. I'm here with my mom and my nana and my new neighbor. But so let me get my notes out. Sorry, I'm using my phone. I did not bring a notepad. But I am against the new proposal for building these tall buildings. I have witnessed, by living in North Vancouver, I've witnessed all the congestion from all these buildings being built, high-density housing. I wanted to bring up a couple points. The other day I was on Lionsgate Bridge going to West Vancouver, and I noticed how backed up North Vancouver was. It was all the way to the bridge, whereas West Van, there was no traffic, and I think that is because of how much housing is being built and how the community is not built to withstand all those people. I also have noticed with a lot of restaurants when I've been going out, everywhere is super full. We don't have a lot of so many restaurants to help all the people, and I think it's really important to have enough infrastructure to support the people that we're welcoming into the community. We always have a joke with my family that if you're not on a reservation list, you're not getting in. And then I also wanted to say I just recently graduated a couple weeks ago, actually, from University of Victoria in recreation and health education. And I was a community leader there, so I'm all about building community and supporting people and everything that you stand for. But I noticed in some of the buildings that we built for residents, all the high-density housing with lots and lots of people actually did the opposite kind of effects of what we thought it would. How it like spread more illness, like because there's so many people clumped together, as well as building less connection, and it's like isolating because there's so many people and you don't know everyone. Whereas a lot of the smaller residence buildings, they're so much more easy to build community because of everyone's being all tight knit. So I also wanted to say about like all the families and current residents of West Vancouver, how it would affect them, like with noise and streets and everything being more crowded. As well as West Vancouver is kind of the middle of like connecting to Squamish and Whistler and Horseshoe Bay. And I think if it's really crowded in West Vancouver, it will also affect all other parts of Vancouver because of the traffic. And then I also did some research about the news. Everyone I talked to coming up to this hearing also didn't know that it was happening. I looked up the news just recently and there was no articles that I could personally find easily about the hearing, so a lot of people, or not public statement, didn't know about this. So I just think it would be great if we could spread the word more before making big decisions. And yeah, sorry it's rambling. Let's see. I think that's it. But thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Thanks very much.
Sorry.
The next speaker is Jacob Isaac, followed by Atta Amiri and Don
Thank you.
Smith. Jacob Isaac.
Mr. Isaac.
I would actually like to forego my time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then we've got Mr. or Mrs. Atta Amiri, I believe.
Yeah. Mr. Amir, you don't wish to speak? Oh, well, someone put it on the list. They wanted you to speak, you see. They saw you come in the room and they said, oh, he's a good speaker, so let's put him on the list.
Then we'll see if the next speaker is Don Smith.
Thank you. Donald Smith, Mr. Smith, thanks.
Followed by
joining.
Fariba Rocker.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Good to see you this evening.
You too. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Don Smith. I've been a resident of West Vancouver for the past 30 years, and for the past 25 years I've lived in Ambleside. I'm sure I speak for many in this chamber when I say that I cannot think of a better place on earth to live than West Vancouver. Regardless of where we live in West Vancouver, we value the quality of life here and wish to see it maintained and enhanced. Before addressing the proposed OCP bylaw amendments, may I say that we're all fully supportive of the proposed changes to the zoning bylaw and the proposed rental replacement and tenant assistance policy, and would encourage Council to proceed with implementing these. On the other hand, we would urge Council not to pass the OCP bylaw amendments relating to the Ambleside apartment area that are before us this evening. Please consider the following 5 reasons. First of all, a local area plan should be based on a vision. These amendments to the Ambleside apartment area are not based on any vision. Rather, they appear to be based simply on a goal to add 1,000 to 1,200 new housing units, a goal that would appear to be no longer relevant or appropriate. 2, the vast majority of people who actually live in the Ambleside apartment area, particularly the area west of 19th Street, do not support the changes as currently drafted. 3, the primary focus of the Ambleside local area plan should be the Ambleside commercial area. There's likely to be broad support for the revitalization of the Ambleside commercial area. To the contrary, there is no consensus in favor of the OCP bylaw amendments for the Ambleside apartment area that are before us today. 4, many of the changes included in the current version of the OCP bylaw amendments are unnecessary and unwanted. Many of them apply to buildings that are not expected to be end of life within the next 20 years. And fifthly, the provincial government's new housing legislation, Bill 44, that David referenced, now prohibits the district from future public hearings for rezoning changes that are consistent with the OCP. The province's explanation is that such public hearings are unnecessary as the OCP itself already had a public hearing. In other words, today's public hearing is potentially the only public hearing that will be permitted for the potential future rezoning of up to 44 sites in the Ambleside apartment area. This is not acceptable. May I suggest the following 5 revisions to the OCP amendment bylaw that comes back to Council for in the future and for public consultation. First of all, with respect to the boundaries of the Ambleside apartment area, do not remove Stratford Court at 2202 Marine Drive from the Ambleside apartment area. Do not include Hollyburn House, West Vancouver United Church, and the Church of Christ Scientist in the Ambleside apartment area. Do not include the 1800 block of Marine Drive in the Ambleside apartment area. 2, limit the height of any new development on Marine Drive between 20th Street and 23rd Street to a maximum of 3 to 4 stories, and eliminate the current site-specific proposals for the 2000, 2100, and 2200 blocks of Marine Drive. 3, eliminate the concept of Hollyburn Corner. This label is largely unknown to the public and should be the subject of a separate neighbourhood-specific consultation and a plan that encompasses both the residential and commercial components. Fourth, limit the density of the Pink Palace site to a maximum of 2.5 FAR and infill height not to exceed 3 to 4 stories, consistent with other infill on Bellevue Avenue, such as the recent Hollyburn Gardens infill development at Bellevue and 21st Street. Fifth, consider eliminating any distinction in the OCP bylaw for the 3 large rental apartment sites, as any infill or redevelopment on these sites will need to be site-specific. In summary, I wish we were here this evening to engage in a constructive dialogue to ensure the best possible future for the area in which we live and love and hope to live in for decades to come. Unfortunately, the process does not permit this, which leaves us no choice but to ask Council to ensure that these proposed OCP bylaw amendments do not pass third reading. We look forward to playing a constructive role in the creation of a new vision for Ambleside that we all support.
That's time, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Fariba Rocker, followed by Bruno Wall.
Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Walker, is it? Ms. Walker, thanks for joining us this evening. Oh, there you are. Sorry, I'm watching the people going there. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I've lived in West Vancouver for the past 24 years, moved here from the US. I would say a smart move on my part. I live at Place 14, 1400 block of Clyde Avenue. The lot is about 23,000 square feet. I'm here to support the proposed area plan and to go a step further and say that 3.0 FAR is not enough. I don't think developers would touch it. I don't think architects would think that it's enough to build a beautiful building, especially a 14-story building. But in any case, I fully support FAR 3. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Bruno Wall, followed by Victoria Meyer.
Good evening, Mr. Wall. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Bruno Wall, President of Wall Financial Corporation. Wall Financial built and continues to own and manage the Ambleside Tower, which is one of the infill sites on 1552 Esquimalt between Dutchess and Esquimalt Avenues. We've, as I said, managed this building for all this period of time and have committed to numerous capital improvements over the past 5 decades. Back in 2018, 2019, we initiated conversations with staff and previous council on an infill development on our site. It was generally supported. We had 2 public information meetings, and at that time it was decided to first update the local area plan before specific infill applications would be considered. So we are now here 5 years later to hopefully consider this. We strongly support infill development. It gives us an opportunity to develop more housing options for West Vancouver while maintaining and protecting individual tenant rights. So we're happy to continue to invest and operate rental housing and other forms of housing in West Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall.
The next speaker is Victoria Meyer, followed by Teresa Dakotas.
Thanks very much, Ms. Meyer.
Teresa Dakotas, followed by Keith Turner.
Thank you, Ms. Dakotas.
Good evening, everybody. I wasn't expecting to talk, but since I am, I'm supporting every idea that has been put forward for tonight's meeting. And FSR of 3 is not much compared to some other areas, especially in downtown. But if that's all that people are advising, then I think it's a strong way to go. And I'm supporting this idea to increase the density and increase housing for younger people to be able to afford to live in West Vancouver because everything is so expensive. So I'm all for it, and I hope that this gets passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dakota.
Thank you. The next speaker is Keith Turner, followed by John Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Keith Turner. I've lived in West Vancouver for about 4 years, but I've been involved in the community for about 20. I think the key thing that we need to consider is the availability of diverse forms of housing. To think that we can continue with the current setup without actually adopting to the realities, I think is somewhat naive and short-term. This will benefit existing and future generations of our community. One of the key things that we need to understand is where and how are the services and skills that we need, who will deliver those. If people are commuting for an hour or hour and a half each way, they'll do that for 6 months and then they'll say enough. And then you've got this continual churn of skilled resources occurring within professional organizations and the municipality itself. Another key factor is that we need to broaden the tax base to enable provision of key services. We know about the environmental impacts that are hitting us. We need to be able to be in a position to address that, and broadening the tax base gives us that base. So to conclude, I would like to highlight that Mr. Hawkins has indicated that there's been significant consultation. So at the end of this public meeting, we've had the consultation that we need. The time now is for the decision. And therefore, I would strongly encourage you to endorse and pass the proposal that is before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
The next speaker is John Miller, followed by Sandy Lytle.
Hello, Dr. Miller. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Well, Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be here before you. We live in difficult times. We've got wars going on around the world, some of which threaten to go nuclear. We've got climate change affecting us. We have massive poverty and massive wealth opposed to each other. And we have questions about how sustainable our economy can be over time. This plan that the district is proposing to bring forward addresses particularly this issue of inequality, of the need for affordable housing, and the need to address something I brought up with you before, which is the significant homelessness problem we've got here in West Vancouver in the face of extraordinary wealth, which I think is an embarrassment to us as a community. So I urge you to pass this plan because it provides affordability, particularly for very low rental people and for elderly people, and for the workers of this community. We want them to be able to live here, and we want our grandchildren to be able to live here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Thanks very much.
Sandy Lytle, followed by Liz Bannister.
Thank you. Ms. Lytle, thanks for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor Sager, councillors.
My name is Sandy Lytle, and I'm a resident of West Vancouver and have been for, I think, 35 years. I appreciate the need for an updated OCP and the work that's gone in by both staff and council to create it. First, I have some comments. My understanding, and it's been mentioned already, the provincial government has eliminated our ability to hold hearings on zoning changes that are consistent with the OCPs. In that case, we may end up with inappropriate developments and unintended consequences. We will have no recourse as a community, and we need to get this right. This council may be trusted, but what's going to happen in 10 or 20 or 30 years to be making those decisions now? Secondly, I'm concerned that some proposed zoning changes to the Ambleside LEP zone. I do not support a 3.0 FAR, only for selected properties. The increase in bulk and massing and height will be significant. When I looked at Appendix E on page 88, which was also up on the screen earlier for the eastern section, there was one particular site that was a 14-story building surrounded by the entire property, other units. It looked like a 14-story building was perched on top of Grosvenor. Is that what we're looking forward to in West Vancouver? Secondly, it appears that certain buildings, condos and rentals, have been identified as end of life, ready for gentrification. To incentivize this, the FAR has been increased. More is not cheaper. We could look at all the shiny new pennies and shiny new units in Vancouver. They're not cheaper because they're 50 stories high and the FAR is 5.0. Look at Gateway and Taylor Way. Lots of units there, waiting for people to move in. We need to maintain as many homes as we can with a price point that more residents can afford. In my opinion, incentivizing development on these particular sites will reduce properties that are affordable, at least somewhat, for people that we're trying to maintain in West Van. Compared to new builds, these housing units are less expensive to rent and to buy and provide housing. It's our missing middle that we're talking about. We're wringing our hands about what to do about rentals, and these rentals are disappearing, and how to protect the renters on the one hand. On the other hand, we're looking at these buildings that are not shiny and new and need some work, and we're displacing the people who are living there by saying they need to be renewed. We should also not be rewarding the property owners of some of those buildings who have not done regular maintenance or have been poor financial planners. It is unfair to the owners of many other buildings, be they rental, be they condo, who have been properly maintained and have been putting money into their buildings, and they too would like the advantage, the monetary advantage of a 3.0 FAR. To increase the FAR of some buildings and not others increases the value of those properties to the disadvantage of others. Allow market forces to take place. If it's not worth the price, nobody's going to buy it and nobody's going to develop it. If a property is left not maintained and neglected, then it's not worth as much, just like an old car or just like an old house, and eventually it goes to land value. And you see that with spec builders buying the poorest building on the street and putting in something new because that's what gives them their profit. End-of-life property should be land value, and we shouldn't be protecting people who have not and giving people who have not looked after their properties special advantage. And lastly, to wind this up, if we allow greater FAR, wait until the local area plan comes from Marine Drive. All those buildings that have been neglected and have been left to run down, those owners will be lining up down the block and out the street, out into the street, looking for the same kind of advantage that you are suggesting be given to properties that have not been maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lytle.
The next speaker is Liz Bannister, followed by Leslie Meyer.
Thank you. Ms. Bannister, thanks for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
My husband and I have lived in West Vancouver for 50 years, and the last 6 have been in Ambleside. So we've followed with interest the planning that has gone into the Ambleside Community Plan. But we were very concerned when we heard that there were going to be changes made at the last minute to the Ambleside apartment area. I just have a story that I want to give you to show how I'm concerned about maybe some of these decisions are being made too fast and people are not being aware. Behind our building is 2202 Marine Drive. It's a 4-story, very attractive, well-maintained building with 14 apartments. I happened to walk by them last Thursday evening and met a resident and said to her, "Did you know that your building has been named in the latest plan and there would be permission for an owner or a developer to tear this building down and put up an 8-story?" And this owner said to me that she was horrified. She'd never heard about this and she didn't think anybody in her building knew about this development. Then I went home and thought about the rest of our block, that is on Marine Drive and Bellevue, the 2200 block. And in it now, there are proposals for high-rises, for more 4-height buildings to be demolished and up to 1 or 2 14-story buildings to be built. And already that block has many, many high-rises. And with the additional allowance for the Pink Palace to increase its volume by 71%, I don't know how they would build something there. It seems that our block, the 2200 block, will almost be non-stop high-rises. And so I began to look around as I watched people walking up and down the street. We older people moved to this part of West Vancouver for its beauty and its gentle lifestyle. We have people who are frail, who have to stay close to home to go walking out on the street. We have people on scooters, people on walkers. And when all these new high-rises go up, there will be a lack of sunlight. There will be deep shadow. There will be a lack of seeing these wonderful corridors of light to the sea and to the mountains. Right now, we have bird life, we have eagles, we have so much more, and we're so thrilled and alive and enjoying our community. So my concern is that this sudden change in putting the possibility for infill for some of these 4-story buildings, many of whom may be like the 2202 Marine Drive that is in such good condition, giving them a possibility to tear them down and build something bigger. And so many people in our neighborhood maybe don't know about this yet. So I felt I needed to say something to you tonight and request that somehow this idea of building new high-rises in the Ambleside apartment area not pass. The rest of the plan, we think, is very good. Thank you.
Ms. Bannister. I'm just curious. Ms. Bannister, I'm sorry. A member of council just wishes a quick question.
No, I'm sorry. No.
Oh, not. Oh, for staff. Sorry, but I'm just curious. I'm trying to picture where you live actually.
2202 Bellevue. Oh, 2203. Sorry.
Sorry. In the high rise on
in
the
the
corner.
high rise. Yes.
Thank you.
Right opposite the Pink Palace. Yes.
Right.
Everybody knows the Pink Palace.
They do. Thank you, Ms. Bannister. Sorry, Councillor Gambioli.
So my question just relates to the commentary about last-minute changes. I don't understand that part. Can staff
Thank you.
explain
I don't
what's
either.
meant by
This-
last-minute? I don't think there's any last-minute changes. I just don't want anybody to be misled with that. Am I missing something?
Through your worship, just to confirm, no, the bylaw that is the subject of the public hearing is the bylaw that council sent to public hearing, and the notice was provided to this bylaw. The bylaw has been able to be inspected and all due process have been met.
And the proposal for this section of Marine Drive has been the same proposal for almost a year. Am I right?
Through your worship, I mean, the original framework was endorsed in July 2023. Council directed themselves further changes in October last year. They gave first reading in January this year, but then also directed a town hall, which led to a very limited number of changes, which Council gave first reading to about a month ago.
But not changes to this portion of Bellevue.
Through your worship, this portion of Bellevue has been provided a wider range of heights, and I would reiterate the message that height is something that provides council flexibility. It is 6 to 14 stories. The building that the previous speaker was speaking to is currently at 21 stories.
21 stories. Okay, I see.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Leslie Meyer, followed by Andy Krawczyk, and then Marion Broadbent. Leslie Meyer.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Thanks.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I moved to 1390 Duchess a year ago, and I have the most magnificent view of Mount Baker, Lionsgate Bridge, Siwash Rock, all the way to UBC and Vancouver Island. I was so thrilled with my investment because I thought the view was just so beautiful. And the woman who lived there before me lived till 99, and she also moved to that place when she was in her 60s, which I am in my 60s, and I thought the view let her live until 99 because it was just so beautiful and peaceful and wonderful. And I'm worried about the Ambleside apartment area and the height that could be in the 1300 block of Clyde, because I would be faced with a 14-story building right in front of my living room. And when I've looked at previous sales in the building, I see that all of my neighbors will have just a giant structure in front of their building, which we all are, made an investment in this lovely building. And I was told by my real estate agent that the height would always be the same height as your old office or the office on Marine and 15th. He actually pointed to your building and said, they'll always just be that height. You don't have to worry.
Out of curiosity, what floor are you on?
I'm on the 8th floor.
Thank you.
And I'm just very nervous about the low-lying building that exists there now being a height of 14 stories. My whole dream would be shattered if a giant building was all of a sudden built right in front of my living room. It's also my favorite terrace where I just sit and just watch everything go by. I moved from North Van, and I've been absolutely horrified by the development that's gone on in North Van and all the traffic. And I just felt so thankful that I live in West Van and I can just go. The lineup on the Lionsgate Bridge is not as long as in North Van, which stretches to almost Pemberton, Marine and Pemberton. There have been times when there's been so much traffic in West Van that you can't even go to Park Royal by car. I've seen the lineups of cars going up the giant hill of Esquimalt. You just see red lights all dotted up Esquimalt when there's bad traffic in West Van. I'm just hoping that there's not so much development that the peaceful community that other residents have referred to. I just don't want that to be destroyed by this development. I have a lot of notes here, but I'm super nervous.
Please don't be nervous, Ms.
Okay,
Meyer.
thank
We're
you.
here to listen.
Okay.
And if you have a lot of notes and you don't feel you can cover it all in the time remaining, then you could wait and come back.
Okay. I just wanted to say, when I was asking people who also are West Van residents if they were coming tonight, most of the people I told did not know about this. They wanted to write to the correspondence at westvancouver.ca, but has that been closed now as of noon today?
It is today.
Or-
It is now.
Yeah, so there are people that I know.
Oh, sorry, it's not closed yet.
Members of the public may provide submissions up to the close of the public
Oh,
hearing.
sorry, up to the close of the
Okay,
public
so
hearing.
I don't
Anybody
think-
watching this,
Yeah.
you're still able to submit
Okay.
correspondence.
Yeah, I'm just worried that people really don't know about it. I just found out about it. I was just absolutely shocked. And I'm so glad I got to be here to talk to you about it. I'm just worried about the infrastructure, Lions Gate Hospital. Yeah, I guess I'm too nervous to look at my notes, but and I won't be able to write it down because it'll close. But I was hoping
That's time, ma'am.
you don't make a big decision tonight. I hope that we have more opportunities for me to bring all of my friends who are also residents to the next meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Andy Krawczyk, followed by Marion Broadbent.
Thank you, Mr. Krawczyk. Good to see you this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Sunday at noon, none of us, Andy Krawczyk, West Vancouver resident, none of us, proud graduates of West Vancouver Secondary School, grad 69, please do not do the math, gathered around to, once every year, a couple of times a year to talk about things and so on. And the only reason I mentioned that is just I did a very quick sort of demographic thought about the nine of us. We've gone on to various careers, law, medicine, education, telephone linesman, warehouse. So I'm proud to say it's a nice diverse group. 3 of us live in West Van. A 4th had lived in West Van and unfortunately died last year. Another 2 live in North Van. 3 or 4 of them live outside of the Lower Mainland. Among the 9 of us, we were able to have 18 offspring. Not a single one of those children live in West Vancouver. I'm not even going to talk about the grandchildren. And it's within the context of that I want to make just a few comments this evening. A comment was made that there is no vision, that there is no consensus. I urge our community to look at the history and the facts and know that this is the result of exactly that. And that is the development of a vision and the development of a consensus. To say it doesn't exist is to negate it, not to state a fact. And let me quote, I am a history teacher by origin. In 2008, the Community Dialogue on Housing, which I co-chaired, said exactly this, and I quote, 84% of residents believe that a greater variety of housing types is needed in West Vancouver to meet the community's social, economic, and environmental sustainability needs. In 2018, this very council, not the people in front of me obviously, but the West Vancouver Council approved an OCP. That OCP stated very specifically the exact same thing, that a variety of housing is needed in order for West Vancouver to remain the same. Here we are looking at a set of bylaws that will, in the single most populated part of West Vancouver, enable that to happen. It does not mean that they will be developed, and some comments have been made tonight that really sort of get a little bit worrisome when people talk about this development of 14 stories. And no, all a plan does is says you can do it if you want. And then you got to wait for the developers and the people to come along with the money and say it. So all this does is provide the permission for exactly what the working dialogue asked for, what the OCP asked for. What does it ask for? It asks for a missing middle townhouses. It asks for a mix of units of all sizes. It asks for expanded seniors housing, and Mr. Hawkins made a comment about that, to be placed in this zone. It asks for strata apartment renewal on low-rise sites surrounded by existing mid or high-rise. It also offers the opportunity for rent-to-own, which I have heard a great deal of people talking about, and perhaps even some rental infill, and for that matter, some co-op housing, and possibly some accessible, affordable housing to house the over 80% of our working force, of our working force that do not live in West Vancouver. So at the end of the day, I would urge you to understand that this is part of an evolution that has come to you tonight. This is not the invention. This is certainly not a last minute. And this is the eventual result of people putting their heads together over the last 15 years, and I do go back to 2008, trying to figure out how the heck can we maintain this community so that we can in fact move forward. And I'm going to end with one final quote from good old Albert Einstein. And you all know it. And that is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I would urge council to have a different result this time and vote for those future generations. Time's up, because sir. The old boys of 1969 didn't stay, but maybe our grandchildren can come back. Thank you very much.
Mr. Krasik.
The next speaker is Marion Broadbent, followed by Brian Wallace.
Thank you. Ms. Broadbent. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Marion Broadbent, and I am representing Strata Corporation VR 251, which is at 460 14th Street. And we are definitely in support of increasing the FAR from 1.75 to 2, because we have been trying to get permission to replace our windows. But because we had balconies that had doors, then we had to go through the, I think it's called development
Variance permit
exemption. Yes. And we have followed all of the guidelines that the West Van staff have given us. We've filled out all of the paperwork. We've hired Vivid Architecture and BMAC Engineering. But unfortunately, it's all been put on hold because of this process. So we really would like to see this decision made. And if this decision is not made, then we would really encourage staff to start looking at our applications and letting us move forward with our windows. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
The next speaker is Brian Wallace, followed by Stephanie Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Nice to see you, sir.
Same, sir.
Been a while.
It has. But I'm here in a different role tonight
You
than the
are.
one you're used to. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name is Brian Wallace, and I live at 2203 Bellevue Avenue. I have last week made a submission on behalf of the Strata Council of the building that we live in, and my comments tonight are representative of my views specifically. In the last century, I lived above Dunderave for 18 years. After a 36-year absence, I returned last December. And in the interim, I lived in the West End for a couple of years, and I highly recommend not doing that. Our first choice for relocating to here was for a condo in Ambleside, Dunderave, for all the good reasons that have been stated in other submissions to you about the local area plan. Tonight and in letters to you, you'll hear numerous concerns about the bylaw revisions from people who live in this area. people like myself who have chosen this area over others. As many have stated, and I will reiterate, the proposed bylaw changes seem to be permitting new development that is not in line with the current neighborhood context.
Excuse me just one sec, Brian. There's some noise. Can we please, I do apologize. I have it on silent. Okay.
As soon as I turn it on, I get these ads.
Okay, sorry. It's really confusing. And I was afraid that might be the hockey game. Thanks, Brian. Please.
Where was I? I have heard that there is a target for new development to add 1,000 to 1,200 more residents in this area. Why? What is the rationale? There is much new development throughout West Vancouver, ranging from Lionsgate Village to the east. Yes, part of that on the other side of the river is West Vancouver. Horseshoe Bay to the west, Cypress Village and other upper levels developments to the north, and in other areas in the district. Some new development in the Ambleside area will happen, but hopefully will be done in a gentle densification rather than that suggested by the bylaw revisions. A good example is the 2 3-story buildings that are infill around the Hollyburn project at 21st and Bellevue. Our major concern is the amount and heights proposed on the south side of Marine from the library to 23rd, which will completely change the character of those blocks. Also of concern is the potential for perfectly good buildings to be demolished for much larger buildings. Among other things, this does not make sense from an environmental viewpoint. Another aspect is the new provincial legislation that removes the requirement for a public hearing if a proposed project meets the OCP conditions. Now, the planner has stated that there are other avenues for development where the public may have an opportunity. However, as the mayor mentioned, we don't have a crystal ball about what the provincial government might do in the future with a goal to, I suppose, making it easier to build projects. One of the comments I'd like to make is concerning our building. It was referenced as a 21-story building, which it is. It is on a site that is about a third of the block and probably provides more open space and greenery than any other building in the Ambleside area. So there are opportunities to achieve new development with a gentle densification, and I think the provision in the OCP for buildings of 8 to 14 stories do not achieve this. I believe there are numerous flaws in the proposed revisions and would urge you to vote no tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
The next speaker is Stephanie Wilson, followed by Lucille Schroeder.
And I'm just going to, Mr. Chu, can I just take a count now? We've had 20 people so far, and how many did we have to start with?
We had about 35.
Okay.
A rough guess, yeah.
Yeah. We'll, I'm going to suggest we'll go until 9:30, and then we'll take a 10-minute recess just so everyone can stretch.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Stephanie Wilson.
Ms. Wilson, thanks for joining us.
Your Worship and Council, I am here tonight to speak in support of bylaw amendments which enable improvements to rental stock and future planning for a more inclusive West Vancouver. Since I moved to the North Shore in 2017, rent for a similarly sized home with similar amenities has almost doubled. Older rental buildings, which often have lower rental rates compared to new buildings, continue to dem-evict tenants for redevelopment, pricing residents out of their own neighborhoods. I plan to stay on the North Shore for many, many years, and I'm grateful that I've been able to make a home and contribute in small ways to my community here. But as a renter, I know that this isn't entirely in my hands, and that disincentivizing a spectrum of rental developments excludes people like me from building a future in a place we love and wish to call home. The current state of rental housing is not on a sustainable path. It means that people who rely on income assistance have few options to stay in the community. It means that lower income earners spend a large percentage of their pay on housing, which limits their ability to participate in so many other aspects of life and save for a future. It means that renters who experience life events like illness, injury, or family separation face an extraordinary amount of housing uncertainty. It means that some people are forced to work well into what should be their retirement years in order to keep their housing. Statistics Canada states that the median income for a full-time, full-year worker across the entire district of West Vancouver in 2019 was $76,000 per year. The District of West Vancouver states that about 75% of people who live in the Ambleside area make less than $50,000 per year. Based on current listings, the average rent for a one-bedroom unit in West Vancouver is $2,770 a month. That's 67% of the gross monthly income for someone who makes $50,000 a year. And speaking specifically to demevictions, almost 3/4 of the current rental apartments in the Ambleside area are over 40 years old. Thoughtful policies to manage demevictions must be a priority to protect renters. Otherwise, people who contribute to the community and want to continue to do so are forced to leave. I don't know if you've ever been through a demeviction, but it is a horrendously disruptive situation that is overwhelmingly borne by people who live in more affordable buildings. Many people who are demevicted can't afford to move into the new building at the current market rate. Infill rental development is an important strategy to use existing lots more efficiently and create new units without displacing people from their homes. I want to point to Starlight's infill development at 151 East Keith in the city of North Vancouver, which will soon add 40 units, including 4 units for older adults at risk of homelessness, to previously unused lot space in Lower Lonsdale. For that reason, I strongly support council policies to support renters at risk of or experiencing demeviction. I am also deeply concerned about access to non-market housing. People who need social or supportive housing to live well should be able to live in their community of choice, and that includes West Vancouver. Homelessness continues to rise across the North Shore, and providing a range of non-market housing options is vital to helping people secure safe and stable homes. Homelessness is particularly high among young people and older adults. No one should be forced to start or end their lives looking for shelter beds or tenting in the woods. Over 10,000 households across the North Shore are in core housing need. It's unconscionable that so many people are at risk of homelessness in municipalities with so much wealth. Housing is a basic human right. This has been affirmed by the federal government many times over. While these amendments may be small, they are an important first step in building a vibrant West Vancouver and improving housing security on the North Shore. It's people that make community, but people actually need to be able to find safe and affordable homes in order to live here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
The next speaker is Lucille Schroeder, followed by Gary Monahan, I believe.
Sorry, Lucille Schroeder?
Schrader. Pardon me.
Thank you, Ms. Schrader. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, is it okay with my mask?
Certainly.
Okay.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Apologies, my voice shakes.
Please don't be nervous.
Hello, my name is Lucille Schrader. I wanted to speak today in support of the proposed Ambleside apartment area plan. This topic is dear to me as I personally am affected by the housing crisis in this country, as well as most of my friends at this age, approaching 30, actually all. I would like to focus my remarks on considering the future of this area, specifically the ways demographic change and an aging population will be positively impacted by the availability of affordable housing in Ambleside. As is true for many people my age, I left an economically depressed rural community to get an education in the city. Many of us have chosen to study topics that reflect our changing communities, for instance, healthcare and the trades, to maintain our homes, utilities, and public spaces. I would very much like to remain in Ambleside and offer my skills to this community, as this is the work that is meaningful to me. But the only rational decision, given the skyrocketing prices everywhere, is to leave. I know I am not the only young professional unable to afford to work in places like West Vancouver, and I fear that hesitation to take action will leave communities like Ambleside devoid of the workers necessary to give residents the options and services they need. This is true for tax brackets below and above my own. It simply does not make sense to apply for a minimum wage position in a grocery store in this area if one must transit for over an hour to get here, getting home late at night. In fact, some of the people who are working late shifts so that the grocery store is open tonight will certainly not be able to attend a meeting like this. Most of us would love to live in a gentle, walkable neighborhood among small businesses staffed by students, youth, and long-term residents. But this is not possible without these workers, who currently must leave. More importantly, essential services like hospital, senior care, government services, and community centers like libraries and public pools depend on low-income workers to operate. The best way to obligate early closures, long lines, lower quality services, and limited services is to lose the staff who can run these places. Tonight, I've heard a fair bit about affordable housing restricted for seniors. It might seem that this is not relevant for me, but for two things. First, I hope to manage to be a senior in Ambleside. Second, I want my city to invest in everyone. I want this for seniors as well. I want to work in service to this community. I believe this plan would increase my chances of being able to stay here and to keep this place healthy and beautiful. Finally, careful design and planning, which is what I see here, is more than capable of addressing congestion, a little bit of traffic, and celebrating architectural features. In fact, this could be an opportunity to make West Vancouver even more of an architectural landmark, as new architects could synthesize their work with heritage. I would ask this council and my community to focus on the lifeblood of this area, not fear of discomfort during necessary growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schrader.
The next speaker is Gary Monahan, followed by Arnaud Laurent.
Thank you, Mr. Monahan. Now, we normally recognize that well-known citizen in our community. He's gone? Okay.
Arnaud Laurent, followed by Vida Nayeri.
Thank you. Sorry, and it's
Laurent, L-A-U-R-E-N-T.
Laurent.
My French is not that strong.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Thank you. So we'll be as brief as we can. Thanks, Mayor and Council members, to provide this ability of hearing us. My name is Arnaud Laurent, and my wife, Vida Laurent. We've been proudly living in Ambleside for over 20 years now, and it's actually a really amazing place. We raised our son here, and unfortunately, it's not affordable for him to live here anymore, so he had to move to Burnaby. We are the proud owner of a unit in 1340 Duchesse, which is prime for development. The building needs to, in fact, a lot of expensive work, which is a huge financial strain to the owners. Speaking about owners, there are quite a lot of retired people in there. We are planning to retire in Ambleside in the next 5 or 10 years as well, despite being the highest tax bracket right now. I'm not sure that we'll be able to afford staying in the next decade if things are not changing. There's a lot of owners that are actually interested in selling. Due to our small footprint, the proposed 2 to 3 floor area ratio is not, unfortunately, enough to incentivize the developers or owners. The building in the east side, our neighbor, is actually a 13-story building. Our unit is located at the second floor of a 4-story building. We were wondering if there is a higher FAR that could be available specifically for that building, for rental buildings or affordable housing that could be considered. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
The next speaker is Vida Nayeri, followed by Dennis O'Neill. Oh, thank you. Dennis O'Neill, followed by Dana Mulhern.
Sorry, again, it was Dana Mulner?
Dennis O'Neill.
Oh, Dennis O'Neill?
And if he's not here, then we'll go to Dana Mulhern. Dana Mulhern.
Dana Mulhern, yes, sir.
Oh. Is that Mr. O'Neill? That's Mr. O'Neill. Okay.
Sorry.
Good evening.
Oh, it's Dennis.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening. I live in high rise at 2203 Bellevue, across from the Pink Palace.
We got a lot of your neighbors out tonight, don't we?
Well, I think there's a reason for that. We didn't know about this until a week or two ago, and most people put their heads together and started doing some research on what's going on, and it's kind of startling. Some of the things that we see is the provincial government is going to make it so that this is the last input we have. And some people may not agree with that, but facts are facts, and right now, that's the way it is. In our neighborhood, most of the things have been said by other people that are more articulate than I am, but in our neighborhood, it is just frightening to see the traffic. Not the traffic that's moving, the traffic that's not moving, and the parking. You cannot find a place to park. And I hate bringing up the Pink Palace. They do not have enough parking spots. They park everywhere. If you go down any day after 4 o'clock, you'll find 5 or 6 cars. They painted the curbs yellow so that people can get in and out without hitting pedestrians. They're occupied by cars every single day. And I can't blame the people. They live in the Pink Palace. They have no place to park. They're talking about putting an infill there. Well, it's got a nice swimming pool there, and they want to put an infill in there. That would be fine if it was limited to 3 or 4 stories. They want to put another 18, 20 stories in there. And that's just not feasible. It takes all the people that live in that area live there for a reason. We moved to the area we're in. We can walk out our front door, the swimming pool, the rec center, the senior center, everything is there. You can walk across the street. If you can get through the traffic and the cars parked there, you can go on the seawall. It's an absolutely beautiful area, and that's why everybody moved there. Now the infrastructure we're talking about, it was mentioned earlier, 2208. Please drive by there. It's a beautiful area. The house is almost spick and span. It's absolutely perfect. You could not even dream of tearing it down. And they want to tear it down and put a 17 or 14-story building in there. Nobody has any objections to proper infill. But you know, I think I could sum it up in one word. No infill should ever be allowed for more than 5 stories, or 4 at the least, would be much better. You can do all kinds of infill in a nice way, and what really frustrates us is if you go to 22nd and on the corner, 2 doors in, they've just built 2 beautiful places. One of them is a couple of doctors have built a building for people that need eye care. It's less than 2 or 3 stories high. It's absolute. They must have spent millions building it, and the infrastructure beside them is the same thing. They were following the rules, and all of a sudden, if somebody pulls the carpet out from underneath the rules, we're going to have all the developers looking for one thing. It's the bottom line. They want to put as much density on a small piece of property as they can. For instance, the Pink Palace, where are they going to put parking? Right on the waterfront. If they dig down to put parking 3 or 4 stories down, you're below the sea level. We have all kinds of problems in that area now. So, as I said, most people have said the things that I wanted to say earlier, and most people have put the concerns out, but it all comes down to keep the story low, do the infill. There's lots of room for new residents to have buildings that are in keeping with what's there now. But please, if you do anything, just drive down that area and have a look at some of the things they want to tear down. It's absolutely insane in my opinion. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much
Mr.
for
Mulhern.
the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli?
A clarification from staff. So one thing, so could you just repeat very clearly about this last input suggestion related to the Bill 44 on the OCP? Because I think I heard what you said, but I just want to hear it again, and then I have a second question.
Through your worship, in front of council are OCP policies. They are not decisions on any individual development applications. You would require owner interest, so it's no one tearing down any buildings. They would have to apply. Council would have to make a zoning decision. Council would also have to issue a development permit. Development permit requirements would require notification, public information meetings prior to going to council, and then a decision in an open council meeting.
Thank you.
So in other words, it is misleading to say that there will be no more input once we pass an OCP. Okay, so just want to be clear. That's my interpretation of what David just said in a much more articulate way. And I just, because we're talking, there's several people who have spoken about this particular address, 2203 Bellevue. Two questions. What's the height of that building, please?
Say it's 21 stories.
It's a 21-story building, through your worship.
21
I was
story.
on council when that building came forward. That's how old I am.
And, but that passed the public hearing, I'm assuming.
Oh, it had a public hearing. It was very contentious.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
And so what would there be a guess from staff as to what the FAR on that property would be?
That's 1.75.
Yeah, that would be my assumption. Sometimes buildings were built more like 1.8, 1.85, but I don't have the exact FAR for that building.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just one question actually for Mr. Bailey, because a few people have mentioned this about the Pink Palace. And I've met once a representative of the owner, and they never mentioned anything about wanting to put a high-rise. They were talking about putting infill in front of their building when I met with them. Have you heard anything different than that?
Well, no, through the mayor, I think that when we've met with the owner's representatives for that building, they've talked about being sensitive to the neighborhood, about understanding the views from behind, and are obviously willing to work with community on something that could be lower.
I think there's fear out in the community, and I just don't know who's created that concern. But let's go to the next speaker, please. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi. Dana Mulhern. I'm going to be here for about 3 seconds. You know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say I support all of this work. I think the council and the staff have done an amazing job past 2008, as Andy said. I think, but I am very concerned that West Vancouver will die unless we have more diversity. As everybody knows, 50% of the people in Ambleside are over 65, and I'm way over 65.
Don't tell us that.
No
one will believe you.
And it's really exciting to have young people back in the world and be able to live here, and have my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and our children be able to be around. That's what keeps us young, and that's what keeps our community young. So I won't keep anybody, because I know there's been wonderful things said tonight. Please
Thanks, Mr.
vote
Mulhern.
yes. Thank
Ms.
you.
Mulhern, thanks so much.
The next speaker is Alexis Chicoine, followed by Susan Parker.
Ms. Chicoine, thanks for joining us this evening. Nice to see you. Have you been down to the new fitness park?
I have.
Excellent.
Checked it out. Thank you for taking some of the advice from the ACDI and
Well,
putting in
thanks
some-
for your advice. Yeah, I think it's been really successful.
Alexis Chicoine. I am a citizen. I live here in West Vancouver. A few people, I want to address a couple things that have come up to begin with. A few people have suggested that people were unaware of the hearing or didn't have an opportunity for engagement regarding this section of the Ambleside plan, and the OCP amendment proposed tonight have had extensive community engagement. There have been multiple community advertised and well-attended meetings, online feedback options, and months of opportunity to write to council, as well as a public hearing has to be posted in the North Shore News, which is also online to be a legal status. So there has been lots of opportunity. Traffic has come up too. Planning across the North Shore has been a large focus for all three municipalities, as can be witnessed by the extensive construction going along all the main streets for ages. People who work here do not live here on the North Shore. That is our main source of traffic. It is difficult to find, for workplaces to find staff, and this includes our teachers and our police. Approximately 25 of the kids, as I understand it, who attend school here in West Vancouver don't live in West Vancouver. We have fabulous schools, but our families can't live here, but they attend school. Moms and dads are driving here every day. TransLink has announced that the North Shore is a focus for future and very near future transit opportunities. Metro Vancouver has recognized the challenges that we are facing with this increased trouble that we're having. Why do we need rental properties? Canadian real estate has been on a tear over the past generation, influencing the belief that buying is always the better way than renting. For generations, the prevailing wisdom has been that renting is a waste of money. One of the biggest misconceptions about home ownership is that it's an investment. That may sound odd. To some degree, though, that is the truth, that there is some investment. Maybe you bought before housing went crazy and you got lucky. I did. I appreciate that. Maybe you are planning to use some of the new BC rules to redevelop and create income streams. But overall, for new buyers, it's likely that the real estate price increases that we have seen over the past 20 years will not continue for the next 20, especially with the high debt levels and more normalized interest rates. Another misconception is that it's one of our only biggest investments over the rest of our life. There are studies, I pulled one from November 2023, that after comparing all costs of buying versus renting, a renter who is a disciplined investor can come out ahead of a homeowner over a long period. I'm not against buying a home. As I said, I own my home here in West Vancouver. It allows people some personal design, tax deductions, and equity, but it is not what everybody wants. A range of housing types are a must to meet the diverse housing needs of our community. There are many considerations on why one would choose to rent over buying a home, and we've spoken of a few tonight, where if we're a lower income, not in the right financial situations, don't have a classic down payment. But let's wear a different hat for a moment. What if it's a lifestyle choice? If you and your family do not plan to stay here or in the same place for 3 years, it's actually a better option to rent. Maybe you want to travel and do other things. Again, renting is a better option. This speaker before Dana said that they live in this location because they can go to the gym, they can walk to the store. This is a big draw. These buildings are in these areas. Employment, if you lack job security, our teachers and our police are hopefully not part of this, but renting makes an option. Stages of life. As our seniors are potentially downsizing from our large homes, they may not want to buy if they're 80 or 90. They still want to live here though. We need rental options for everybody. Housing is an investment, but in some way, cash speaks more. And if you are able to loosen up some of your cash from your home and play with it in other ways, maybe all of a sudden you can travel more. You can do your TFSAs and RIFs and all the things I don't know enough about and need to. Freeing up these features are a big, big option. Age groups that come to us, like millennials and such, have a different way of thought. The benefits of home buying over renting is not the big investment.
That's time,
for them.
ma'am.
Thank you. A home isn't what brings them happiness and stability. They're building their lives in different ways. And I'll just close with this one statement. What does bring stability to a community and its members are a local area plan that incorporates viable housing options for people from all walks of life. Rental housing is important to meet the needs of a diverse population and is vital to a healthy economy and equitable, resilient housing system. Please vote for this plan.
Thanks very much.
The next speaker is Susan Parker, followed by Sheila Fonseca.
Thank you. Ms. Parker. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Hello.
Are there many people? Were you down the hall?
I am, yes.
Oh, are there many down there?
There's probably, 10 or...
Well, we could invite those people. Well, when we take a little break, maybe we'll shuffle the seats a bit.
Well, I'm going to be really quick.
Thank you.
My name's Susan Parker. I've lived in Ambleside for 15 years, and it's beautiful, and I love it there, and I want to stay there. And I think this plan, this proposal is well thought out, well researched, and like somebody said earlier, I think it's time. So I enthusiastically support this plan. Thank you.
Ms. Parker.
Sheila Fonseca.
Thank you. Ms. Fonseca, thanks for joining us. Somebody else from down the hall.
There's a few of us down there. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity for me to speak. I've been a resident of West Vancouver since 1965, and I have owned at Place 14 for 41 years. So this is where I've gone to school, I've grown up, I've had my children, and I now have grandchildren. Like many of the others that spoke, my children are not able to live here, and my grandchildren, I don't know, they're only 13. I live in one of the low-density, end-of-life buildings, and I'm feeling a bit like I'm hostage because, well, yes, I bought when it was very inexpensive, and I've watched it increase, not to the value of any other property in West Vancouver. It is now at a stage where we're at the point where I'm going to have to spend $88,000 in order to get it up to the needs that need to be met right now, and then we'll start all over again. It's a wooden frame building. It's end of life. I 100% support the OCP, and I would appreciate it if it was a little bit higher, the FAR, but yeah, I'm good to go. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Fonseca. Thanks.
Kathy Lambert, followed by Martha Baraza.
Thank you. Ms. Lambert.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And thank you for your time and commitment to this OCP. I've been an owner in West Vancouver for 36 years, and I'm an owner of a building which has aged out. I support the OCP and all the amendment bylaws because it will provide a diversity of housing and an increase in housing density, which are both needed at this time. Mr. Cruikshank so eloquently stated everything I believe, so I'm not going to repeat it, and thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Martha Baraza, followed
Thank
by
you.
Gary Poroznik.
Ms. Brosna, thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you very much for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you.
And I'm talking about our building, 1340 Duchess Avenue. I've been a resident of Ambleside for over 30 years. And what I would like Council to consider is an increase of the present proposed allowable density for my building location. This would allow for a redevelopment construction of a 12 to a 14-story high building. Please keep in mind the fact that the building next door to us is 13 stories high. Presently, our existing building is in need of very costly repairs, totaling a staggering sum of $2,600,000, which represents from $80,000 to $90,000 per unit. This is a very considerable amount for most of the apartment owners, since, like myself, we are retired people and there are young families. It seems that the proposal floor ratio in the new site fails to provide sufficient incentive for owners or developers to pursue a redevelopment. I ask the Council to consider our predicament and allow a minimum of 12 to 14 stories as required to make a redevelopment financially viable. Thank you for your attention in this matter, and I hope you can consider it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Next speaker is Gary
Prosnick,
Poroznik.
how are you tonight?
And Mr. Poroznik did bring some handouts, which I'll distribute at the end of the speakers with other written submissions, and then followed by Lucinda Jones.
We would expect nothing less.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Did you find out the score of the game?
No.
Would
Don't
you,
you tell
would you
us.
like to know?
No. God, no.
Okay.
Please, no.
Okay. I've given you a handout, and it's an email. Attached to it is an email that I responded to a notice I got from ADRA. I'm a member of ADRA. And my concern, I'm going to express at the high levels. Council has an ability to make decisions that have been made by previous councils in the last 50 years. And I think it's really important, in my mind, that you understand there's an overwhelming support in the community for development and missing middle and housing. And I know there's people here that don't like the idea, but I can tell you I talk to probably 10 to 20 a week. And it's 10 to 1 in terms of people that want development versus don't. And I've spoken to many of the people that don't want it, and the answers are very shallow, and they simply don't understand the economics. And so I want to summarize here, and I'm going to read from this part of it because I've said it before, but I don't think a lot of residents know. First of all, I think it's been said before that, you know, the idea about not having forums to talk about future development, I don't think there's going to be all kinds of ways to provide feedback to councils to help them make the right decision. And the key is you've got top staff to be able to do that. Hopefully you get more because we need more development. So I think the other thing is that the red herring is what the province has asked you to do. What the province has asked you to do is a drop in the bucket compared to what you need to do. We need a West Vancouver solution. I think council admitted that 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the government, you know, they've got some ideas to drive it home that you got to get off your butts, everybody, not just West Van. Some of the proposals don't make any sense to me. I mean, to have every house, you know, be serviced for 4 units makes no sense. Doing nodes around schools makes a lot of sense to get the traffic off the roads. Anyway, the point that I want to make here is that increased density is a given on any housing project in the current market in Canada in order to build rental or saleable units that are affordable to the majority of the segments of the population in our communities. And most of these segments of our communities are not wealthy people. They are people that service in all kinds of ways. I'm a trustee in bankruptcy. 50% of Canadians are one paycheck away from not being able to meet their needs. 66% are 2 months away. And that gives you a sense of how limited the money and the money that people have to live on in our communities. Think about the people that service you in the grocery stores and the restaurants, etc. We can't get services in West Vancouver for older people that need it because they're all gone, driven out of here. Anyway, it's a simple law of supply and demand that we need to build, and you know that the density we need is going to be dependent on what the developers are going to need to afford to build. And so whatever's been proposed, it may not be enough. And so if we want the housing, you're going to have to look at the raw economics at the time to see whether or not it's affordable. Because if they won't build, then we have an ongoing problem that's gutting our communities. And it's not just the younger people and workers, the downsizers. The first time I heard about this was a downsizer. Lived here 40 years, raised 2 kids, ran the community center for 20 years, and she couldn't afford to, there was nothing built for her after she sold in 2006. So the issue is that without development, we're not sustainable in West Vancouver because we have not had development. Because development produces the money to do everything. It's the main source of revenue. And the population growth of West Vancouver in the last 50 years, 50, since up to 2021, has been 1/6 of the average of Metro. So we've left on the table 84% of the money that allows us to be financially capable, maintain our infrastructure, Look at housing solutions, obviously, but look at transportation options, environmental issues that have to be dealt with, and what I call family legacy. And family legacy is when we move here, we want to stay here as long as we want, potentially till we die. We want our kids to be able to live here. We want our grandkids to live here. None of that's possible. We know that. I've got 4 kids. I'm here not because of me. I want them to have a decent community to live here. Most people since 1995 that grew up here and graduated are now 47. They can't afford to live here. So council, I think it's overwhelming, I think, the need in the community and the support. So those that say no, I'm hoping to do the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. How many more do we have?
We have 3 more names on the speakers list.
Okay. Can I just ask, if you haven't put your name on the speakers list, anybody who would like to add their name to the speakers list? So there's 4. Anybody else? 5. Okay. I hope everyone wouldn't mind if we just took a very short 10-minute recess and then we'll come back. Okay? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to reconvene the public hearing if we may. If everyone could come and take a seat. I'm just waiting for one member of council to return, and then we'll reconvene. We're just waiting for one member of council, but if everyone could Mr. Chu, how many more people do we have on the speakers list now? Do we have an updated speakers list?
We did get 2 more names, so right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in the gallery and 1 person who's been waiting on WebEx since the start of the hearing.
Oh, that's patience.
Yeah.
And
So
sorry to the person
3
waiting.
names.
We always finish the people in person first. So could we call the next speaker, please?
The next speaker is Lucinda Jones, followed by Johnny Van Dyke, followed by Michael Geller, Barbara Shard, and then our WebEx, Shirley Nand.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, nice to see you this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Nice
for
to be
coming.
here. Thank you. So the honest to goodness reality truth is that we've got Lionsgate Bridge, which has sometimes 1 lane and sometimes 2 lanes in your favor. And so it seems to me that one cannot be continuing to develop and create more and more dense housing here in West Vancouver in a bubble when we've got the issue of vehicle traffic. And it seems to me that we can't put the cart before the horse and be developing higher density before really that riddle is taken care of. And I know that might sound boring or something, I don't know. Like it's so common sense that we can't just create in a bubble. These buildings can be beautiful, they can be as tall as the sky, but in the end, the traffic going across the North Shore, I have to leave my home at 1:30 in the afternoon if I want to go on Second Narrows Bridge and through the tunnel or whatever. And so that points to the problem of where is all that traffic coming from? We've heard people talk about even children coming to our schools, commuting, definitely tradespeople. So there needs to be incentive and there needs to be affordable housing. And so it seems to me, why is the council not actually setting the parameters of what that affordable housing is and put it plain and simple, $1.3 million 3-bedroom townhouse? Like, that isn't so difficult. And instead of down at the foreshore, where it's being spoken to, that's our livable, beautiful, breathable landscape. Why aren't these being built around the schools? So we're right away reducing traffic in 2 ways. People aren't commuting anymore because they can afford a $1.3 million townhouse, and those buildings are right at the schools. So that's that issue. Incentives to employ local tradespeople as well. That's just one offering of a suggestion. And it's been woefully witnessed how housing has become so unaffordable because the Canadian government, the nice Canadian people that we are, have just allowed anyone to come here and pay whatever price for housing. I've heard stories, true stories, of people pulling up when a deal is about to be signed and opening up the trunk of their car and saying, $500,000 more, whatever this person's offering, here's another $500,000 cash. This has been happening in West Vancouver, and that is why we have no longer affordable houses. This is true. Don't ask me any more details. And then the issues of livability, hopefully this is all, we're not just thinking of ourselves as the only creatures and the only species that densification has to work for. I hope nobody minds that I point out one building, like at the corner of Marine Drive and 23rd on the southeast corner. Ridiculous lighting. This one building, it's like, who allowed that? If we could please just like tone that down. We have birds, we have squirrels.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the lighting in the Cressy building. They
Yeah,
posted a very
inside
high-
it's stairwells for, I don't know how many stories that is, 15 or 16
Yes,
or
it
like
shows
we
in a very
can,
bright blue light.
we cannot be allowing that. Like if we densify and have that multiplied by that number of buildings, it's like we might as well just all move to Las Vegas. Oh, thank you for the laughter. I'm going to end there at the top.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
The next speaker is Johnny Van Dyke.
Mr. Van Dyke. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks, Mayor and Council, and staff. Yeah, I think you've done a really good job. The staff has done a really good job of listening to the community through this whole process and putting together a plan that's reflective of what the community wants. And I think tonight we've seen, a lot of positive support. I think significantly more than the negative from what I've been hearing. And I think I hope that that's reflective of the work that has gone in, and I think is true of the community in general. I'm a resident of West Van. I'm in 1363 Clyde, place 14 on 14th and Clyde. It's a low-rise wood structured building. Our last depreciation report showed, I think, there's about $8 million in repairs required over the next, 5 or 6 years. It's not due to lack of maintenance. It's just an old 45-year-old wooden structure building. It was built in the 70s and just needs a lot of work to bring it up to code, and it wasn't built very well. So it's actually quite difficult to put that amount of money into an old building like that. So that's where some of us owners have got together and started talking about redevelopment and wanting the support through this plan. I talked to a couple of developers that I know, and they were nice enough to put some energy into it and actually run it through their numbers. One of them came back and said sort of, 4.0 is about where we would need it to be, and the other one said, 3.0 would be the bare minimum for us to look at it, to enable us to hit our margins and, provide the owners with the numbers that they need. And so I'm just putting my voice of support to ask you to put this through at 3.0 being sort of the bare minimum to accomplish any redevelopment of a site like ours. And I think it's a pretty prime site for redevelopment. And we actually did have it on the market. We put it up for sale in 2017, and the developer that was interested was planning on I believe, just the existing FAR, and the bid was too low, and so we voted it down, not by a huge margin, but enough that I think we need 80%, and we didn't get close to that. So we have pretty good data to know what is needed, and 3.0 is sort of the bare minimum. And to speak to some of the other people that have mentioned things like it doesn't always mean it's going to be cheaper. It's not necessarily going to be diverse homes. These are going to be expensive new homes. Well, maybe there's ways to be creative on some of the ways that it can be add value to the community by adding parking potentially as part of the CACs, or even sometimes there's a rental component to a new development as a requirement, or things like that which would provide value to the community. So anyways, thanks for all your hard work, and
thank you, Mr. Van Dyke. Thanks for joining us.
Michael Geller, followed by Barbara Shard.
Mr. Geller, you've been a very patient person this evening. Nice to see you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Michael Geller. I'm a resident of Vancouver, and for that reason I did hesitate whether to sign up to speak. But I have been working in West Vancouver since 1974 when I started work on Libby Lodge in West Vancouver as a young architect planner with CMHC. And since that time, I've been involved, as some of you know, with a number of developments in West Vancouver, including the first purpose-built rental housing at 21st and Bellevue in over 40 years, and it took us 5 years to get that approved. And there was a lot of concern in the community, and when it was finished, I think people were generally quite happy with it. Similarly, Hollyburn Mews, across from the West Van United Church, a great deal of concern and consternation when it first began, but I think at the end of the day, people generally agreed that that was the kind of housing that we need. I did a couple of heritage projects in Ambleside, and again, people on the streets were nervous. 4 homes on one lot. It's going to be awful. And when it was finished, people thought it was fine. And I mention that because I think the same thing is going to apply to this OCP. I've heard a lot of concern from people, legitimate concern, potentially a forest of high-rises blocking views. There won't be a forest of high-rises in West Vancouver. I know that for the similar reason to the last speaker. The densities that are being proposed here are simply not high enough to warrant the kind of significant redevelopment and demolition of older projects that we're starting to see in Vancouver, which ironically I strongly oppose. I strongly oppose 18 and 20-story buildings at a 6.8 floor space ratio on leafy streets lined with duplexes. But that's not what's being proposed here. I support the plan before you. I know staff wish I wouldn't, because when a developer stands before a council and supports something, there's obviously, he's up to something. But the fact is, this truly is a made in West Vancouver solution. And I say this version because I've sat in this council chamber, as have you and many others, and heard about a number of different versions. But the plans, I think, have generally been toned down, the densities have been reduced, the number of sites where development could be encouraged have been reduced. But overall, I think this plan is actually going to serve you well as a starting point in terms of trying to encourage a bit more housing, a bit more diverse housing, which is definitely what you need. I wish I had time to address many of the comments that have been made to you tonight, because some of them simply aren't correct. As I say, there won't be a forest of high-rises. This plan hasn't been sprung on people at the last minute. I mean, literally, it's been talked about for over a year. Excuse me. And if anything, if I have a regret, is that it probably won't result in as much housing as one might like, but there's other opportunities for more gentle density over time. I agree with the speaker who said proposing 4 units on every lot in West Vancouver actually was wrong, and I think council in some respects did the right thing by rejecting that. So to conclude, I think this is a made in West Vancouver solution. You complimented me on being patient. If anybody's been patient, it's been your staff, who worked through a variety of alternatives and solutions, many public meetings, information sessions, and so forth. And I'll be terribly disappointed if, after hearing so many people in West Vancouver coming out speaking in favor of a proposal to provide more housing, yes, there are people who are concerned, but overall, I was both shocked and pleasantly surprised by the number of people who came out and urged you to approve this OCP, and I am one of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Geller.
The final name for in-chamber speakers is Barbara Shard.
Ms. Shard, thanks for joining us this evening, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I actually sent a letter to you all last night, and I just want to read a little, some of it, if that's okay.
Thank you. We did receive it.
And you also already have this. So, I'm very concerned about the future of the 2 former land use contract sites in the 1300 blocks of Clyde and Dutchess. should the proposed OCP amendments not be approved. I'm an owner of a unit in Place 14, located at 1363 Clyde. Our condo building was not well built to begin with and suffers from the many and ever-increasing maintenance and repair challenges of wood frame condos built in the 1970s. Despite this, we owners have been doing the diligent and responsible thing of maintaining and repairing our complex throughout the years, but inevitably it becomes a losing battle as the building nears its end of life. In our AGM just this past week, the most pressing need identified was addressing serious moisture issues with the building envelope. Though it's yet to be confirmed how much this is going to cost each of us, it will be a shocking amount to say the least, and it remains to be seen how many others will be able to manage their share, how many owners, will be able to manage their share of the financial obligation. When the owners inevitably and collectively realize that upkeeping the building can no longer be justified, we will have no other choice but to make the difficult decision to sell to a developer. However, obtaining a fair price for the building or even to elicit any developer interest would not be possible if the status quo were to remain. Both of these former LUC sites are currently limited by the zoning that reflects the former provincially driven LUC. They are neither RM1 nor RM2 zones, so are not in the zones proposed to increase from 1.75 to 2. Rather, these LU sites were rezoned in 2022 to site-specific CD zones, and the CD zones do not employ FAR as a control, but rather limit the height and the number of stories, i.e. 4. Planning did a rough estimate for me that both the existing and permitted density of these sites and came up with it's approximately 1.5 to 1.6 FAR. So no developer today will get out of bed for that FAR and 4 stories. And no developer is even likely to redevelop at 1.75 or 2 FAR, given the economics of today. The 2 4-story LUC sites are actually nestled in a block consisting of a 7-story rental, 3 condos at 9, 10, and 15-story, all built at 1.75 FAR. On the other side of the street on Clyde, we've got 3 rentals, 2 condos ranging from 7 to 8 stories, all built at 1.7 FAR. All those buildings are of the zones proposed to change to 2.0 FAR. A redevelopment of up to 3.0 FAR at Place 14 would not look out of place in the block, and the proposed policy BF-BF4 contains the necessary wording to protect against building anything that is not in keeping with surrounding development, does not integrate new development with existing views, circulation, and the character of existing buildings, and specifically to policy 4.4.5A, with appropriate heights to be determined through contextual review of the proposal. The proposed OCP guideline of up to 3.0 FAR and a range in height of 6 to 14 stories allows some flexibility for potential designs. Place 14 in particular, which at 32,300 square feet is large enough and well located to attract a very appealing community amenity contribution to the benefit of the wider West Van community. Place 14 has already been patiently waiting 4 years when our consultants last approached the previous council to discuss our building's future, but some council members expressed the need to wait upon the anticipated Ambleside LIP. So now it is here. Recognizing that council has lots of other policies to consider along with this one, I urge you to strongly support the renewal that planning has put forth for the 2 former LUCs. Should planning's proposed OCP bylaw amendments not proceed at this time, then please ensure our 2 sites do get included in the next reiteration of the proposal. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks very much. And now I understand that we have a very patient person that is waiting on the WebEx.
We have, and someone else has since joined on WebEx, so I'll start with the first person to sign up that way, Shirley Nand. Ms. Nand, you should be able to unmute your microphone now and turn on your...
It's Shirley...
N-A-N-D, Nand.
Nand. Ms. Nand, if you're there, we're here to listen to you.
Hi there, sorry, just give me 1 second. Hi, my name is Shirley Nand. I am a partial owner to an apartment in the Duchess Building in Ambleside, co-owner with my partner. We wanted to just simply state that a lot of people made some really great points today. We wanted to say that we are also in favor of rezoning, that in regard to the current building and height restrictions, we wanted to simply state that they don't reflect the needs of, we don't feel that it reflects the needs of today's market and landscape where we are extremely short on housing. Our building, as you've heard a little bit about the Duchess, is a 4-story building that's surrounded by much taller buildings. To the west, directly next door, is a 9-story concrete building, and to the south is a 14-story building on Clyde Avenue, and we're surrounded by several other much taller buildings, also in line with Clyde. Despite our building being in the costly process of its exterior building envelope being redone, we still fully support the rezoning of our lot to allow for more building density. We don't believe it'll impact any views, as some of the points have been brought up, because there's already taller buildings around in the area. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate everybody else coming up with their reasons for rezoning. Yes, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much for joining us. And the final speaker on WebEx?
The final speaker on WebEx is Drishti Katwani.
Sorry, it's
Drishti Katwani.
Drishti Katwani?
Katwani, I believe.
hope I don't get that wrong. Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, thanks for joining us. There we are. Drishti.
Yes.
Thank you.
Drishti Katwani.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes. So, hi, my name is Drishti Katwani. I'm currently an international student at UBC. I currently live in West Vancouver in Westbrook amongst a number of other international and domestic students who reside in West Vancouver to stay close to campus. I stand before you today to express my strong support for the Ambleside Area Plan and the proposed zoning bylaw and the official community plan amendments. As a young adult and student, I believe these changes are crucial for fostering a more inclusive, diverse, and sustainable housing landscape in our city for our growing community. Agreeing to the proposed zoning bylaws, which advocate for an increase in permitted floor area from 1.75 to 2.0 floor area ratio, with no change to existing maximum heights, would allow a path forward in properties in West Vancouver. These slight increases do not propose a change and do not propose to build new houses, but rather call for the reinvestment by existing owners into current homes. This investment could significantly improve the quality of life for residents, including students who rely on safe, comfortable, and functional living spaces by effectively preserving rental homes. As a student, finding affordable and suitable housing has always been a challenge. The introduction of missing middle housing is a brilliant solution which will come with this proposed zoning bylaw amendment. This missing middle housing solution will provide an affordable alternative to the often inaccessible single-family homes, an alternative to high-rise apartments. They represent a critical step towards ensuring that students, young professionals, and families have access to housing that meets their needs without breaking the bank. The accessibility of the 1800 block of Marine Drive would allow an incredible development to allow residents of rental areas to work in nearby commercial areas. And as a student, this sounds particularly needed and vital for our community. Given that the Canadian government has now raised proof of funds for international students up to $20,000, 50% of applicants have reduced, and many international communities are forced to turn their heads away from Vancouver and Canada as places of opportunity. Allowing residents to have a job as well as revitalize the labor force in the area would be a small but mighty gain for both the students and city. As a student and a member of the Vancouver Housing Market Club, we see and are students that have come to Vancouver in search of opportunity for themselves and their families. Finding rental housing in Vancouver and their prices have been an incredible wall for existing and potential students to remain in West Vancouver. As a university student, I wholeheartedly agree with these amendments because they address the pressing need for diverse and affordable housing. And they facilitate community integration and ensure that our city remains a welcoming place for all, regardless of age or economic status. I am in full support for improving the livelihoods of my fellow peers and a city that we love and are deeply grateful for the opportunities that they grant us. Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us. Thank you. Is that it for people on the list?
May I say one more thing?
Of course. And I'll just get you to reintroduce yourself.
Oh, thank you so
I
much.
do have your name written down.
I'm Leslie Mayer.
Right.
And I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to say one last thing as I'm more composed. Just the people that were talking from Place 14, which is the 1300 block of Clyde. I'm not opposed to it staying the same height. I'm just really opposed to anything greater because I think it would be very unfair to all the residents of my building. And that's what I'd love to say.
Thanks very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to ask, is there anyone else here this evening that wishes to address council on these, on this public hearing? And I'll ask for a second time, is there anyone else who wishes to address council? And for a third time, is there anyone who wishes to address council? And hearing none, I think it's appropriate that we close the public hearing. Councillor Thompson, I'll ask you if you would make that motion.
Thank you. I'll recommend that all written and oral submissions regarding proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5291, 2024, and proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5336, 2024, regarding the Ambleside Local Area Plan apartment area up to and including the June 24th, 2024 public hearing be received and that the public hearing be closed.
Thank you. Councillor Watt? Oh, sorry. So that we've got a seconder, and now a discussion from members of council.
I just actually have a question. If staff have any more comments related to
I was
anything
going to
that was
actually,
said?
on that point, depending on whether council decides to vote on this or not, we're still at liberty to discuss. We can't receive any outside comments once we close the public hearing, but we are able to ask questions and clarifications from staff. Mr. Bailey?
Through the mayor, I think that we have to be very careful about the answers that we provide once the public hearing is closed. Typical practice is that staff don't provide responses. We can provide clarifying questions, just as long as we're not providing any new information or anything that could be construed as new information.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder.
Yes, so my question, one of the greatest concerns that we keep hearing about is the height. And I understand that we still have the ability to make changes to the proposal for height at this time. But does that have to be made prior to they vote on this proposal, or should the proposal be passed? Can changes then be made to the height, or are you then stuck with the?
Through the mayor, I think what staff would recommend is that you close the public hearing, and at consideration of third reading, you could amend the bylaw at third reading to change height. So, for example, if you were uncomfortable with 14 stories and wanted to make it, pick your number, you would then direct that the bylaw, the OCP bylaw, be amended in whichever location you deemed appropriate to go from 14 stories to, say, 12 stories or 11 stories or whatever it might be, and you would do that as an amended third reading of the OCP bylaw.
Thank you.
I think it's important for people like the last speaker to understand that the building, for example, you referred to my building, that's actually a 3 FSR. So it doesn't, 3 FSR doesn't mean that the building has to be tall. And the new building on Clyde Avenue at Clyde and 15th, I may be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure it's a 3 FSR. Sorry, any more discussion on closing the public hearing? Sorry, Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, and just further to Councillor Snyder's question, and I guess the mayor's comment on that, understand that there is a relationship between height and density and FAR. And the mayor just gave an example that 3 FAR on his property is a 3-story building built out lot line to lot line. But if you're going to take, say, a 14-story building and make it a 6-story building and maintain a 3 FAR or 2.75, it's going to consume a great deal of the site. It may, in fact, be an impractical situation depending upon how much of a variation you're making on that height. So and this is all to say is that you can't simply reduce height and everything's going to be okay. You could be infringing on minimum setbacks on the site. It may not be practical. So there is a limit. We can do that. but it may not give the intended result.
Okay, any further discussion on closure of the public hearing? Call a question. All in favor? Contrary, thanks very much. Now, there is no further discussion permitted. As tempted as you may be to write members of council, once the public hearing is closed, that's it. So we'll now go back and I'll reconvene the council meeting. And we have covered the approval of the agenda. We have covered the annual report. We're going to consider a new building bylaw, but that is withdrawn for this evening. And I'll go to the councillor's motion regarding Pasco Road foreshore rezoning. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I'd like to recommend the foreshore rezoning as written.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder, would you like to second that? Thank you. Councillor Gambioli. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're leaving us, thanks again for joining us this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, so we haven't had chance to talk about this particular notice of motion yet, so I'm sort of starting from scratch, and there's no report, so I have a few questions. So first of all, normally when residents have concerns, especially around building permits and issues, they would go to our planning department. So I'm just wondering why, in this case, it's not the planning department that is bringing this forward. In other words, why hasn't this gone through our planning department as opposed to being brought up directly by councillors?
It has been discussed by the planning department, and this is the council direction. Mr. Bailey, I think, suggested that this would be an appropriate way to get a resolution.
So I didn't know it had gone through the planning department lately, so can planning give us their opinion about this particular item?
So through the mayor, my understanding is that, through discussions with members of Pasco Road, and various councillors taking the time to go and visit and talk to and understand the experience of folks on Pasco Road, that they would, they asked staff how to properly, draft a notice of motion in order to provide for the things that they wanted. And so, for example, things like access to the waterfront during an emergency, those sorts of things. And staff then provided advice on how that notice of motion could be drafted. To be clear, staff aren't recommending that. I mean, the policy is the OCP policy is the OCP policy. Council is well within their rights to, listen to residents and to direct change of policy, and that's what we've done, and we've provided technical advice on how that can happen. And then that's up to council to direct us to move forward, and we'll do so happily if told to do that.
Okay, but just to be clear, staff don't support this exception to our current rules.
Well, through the mayor, I mean, staff are relatively neutral. If it's council's wish to proceed in a different direction than what we have, then that's council's wish, and we'll provide a council report at the appropriate time with the bylaw changes, providing sort of pros and cons and a professional analysis, and council will be free to make your decision.
Councillor Gambioli, this is just to bring forward a report. So.
Right, and bringing forward a report requires resources from staff, and it actually asks staff to engage with the province. It asks staff to bring forward an amendment to the zoning bylaw and the official community plan, and define appropriate access structures. So I think it's a lot of work for staff. And so I'm just wondering, so again, it says here, and I don't know if the public even can see this, so I'll just read some of it out. Some residents of Pasco Road have expressed concern regarding emergency access due to the conditions of the road. And so what does that mean exactly?
Sorry, Councillor Thompson. I mean, Pasco Road is not technically a legal road. It's a informal, I suppose, easement across a number of people's properties, and therefore the municipality doesn't maintain it. That means they don't get snow clearing, they don't get the same kind of attention that other roads in West Vancouver get. Councillor Thompson, you've got your mic on. Did you want?
Yeah, it was placed because you said Councillor. Yeah. Anyway, I'm curious about Councillor Gambioli's thread of emails. This is a notice of motion. You know, we've got this unique circumstance in West Vancouver where the access is limited and it's concerning, and we are just asking staff to see if we can make some changes to an overriding bylaw that we currently have, and I think it's well worth exploring.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, anybody who's been out to Pasco Road and seen it, I think, would understand the limitations on that narrow road that is not owned or maintained by the municipality. And I just wanted to add that I spent a lot of time on the water kayaking all along our foreshore, and I see small ladders that are, built into the side of the rock that go down to the high tide line. And I don't think they're asking for anything different than we see along a lot of our waterfront.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Well, I have been out to this property and driven the road and gotten out of my car and walked to the edges of those properties that I could without trespassing. And I haven't heard what Councillor Gambioli has had to say, but I think I am of much the same thought pattern. I lived in Lions Bay, as I've told a goodly number of people a few times, when the highway was collapsing around us and the headlines were reading, "Killer Highway Strikes Again," and people were killed in Lions Bay when M Creek flooded over and the bridge was wiped out, and when Strachan Creek took out the bridge that they had there. And those people who had to be evacuated were not evacuated by water. They were evacuated by air. So I'm not going to support this decision because I don't believe in one-offs that accommodate people who buy something and then ask us to change the situation. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Any other discussion? Councillor Gambioli?
I just don't see the difference. I'm trying to understand, the people who live there are in a unique place, but as Councillor Cassidy said, they bought their homes there, caveat emptor. And really, there are rules and regulations that we have and that the provincial government have because people have over 100 years built structures on the foreshore that they shouldn't have, and a lot of it is very detrimental to the environment. And I don't understand the difference between saying, well, I live in a dead-end street that doesn't get plowed in the winter when it snows, so I should be able to build a road through the local park to get out in case of emergency. I mean, this is an encroachment on the foreshore outside of your own property, and I just see this as a real precedent. I just don't I can think of, there must be hundreds of examples of people who will be able to say, we live in an awkward street and we want to, we want you to build us we want to build a helicopter pad in our cul-de-sac or something. It's, it gets to the point of being a little bit silly. And I don't think that people are going to stop by just having, a ladder or a stairwell down to the water. I mean, we know for a fact that at least one resident built essentially illegally while building an addition to their home. And, that's what started this off 3 or 4 years ago. I don't understand why this is coming not from our planning department, but directly from council members. And I think it's a very bad precedent to set. And I don't want to spend taxpayers' money on having staff go further in this regard.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, just briefly, I'm trying to understand why it's a precedent when it goes on all over the district. Maybe it's a precedent in granting that permission, but what I see is not structures all over the place, and I spend a lot of time out on that water. I see metal ladders down on the rock, and if somebody wants to go down there and dive into the water and enjoy that as opposed to being rescued, so be it. But we are...
Thank you.
I'll just leave it there.
I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor. No.
It's okay. It's okay.
Question. All in favor? Contrary, the motion is carried. Item number 7, the proposed zoning bylaw to enhance retail diversity. Councillor Cassidy, please.
It is recommended that proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5328, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you. Now, we still have items on the consent agenda. The Community Awards and Recognition Program. Do you want to?
I know it's a long
night. Sorry, Mayor Sager.
Yes.
We had item 7.1 added to the agenda. The Ambleside LAP bylaws.
Okay. Do we have the motion? We don't have anything written. Okay.
I do. So we're going to break this into 3 votes, three separate votes. And the first vote is recommend that the official community plan bylaw number 4985 2018 amendment bylaw number 5291 2024 be read a third time.
Sorry, can I just see?
That's the OCP amendments. Do you want me to?
Okay.
Do you guys want me to read it out again, or?
We can't put that up on our screens. No. Yeah, we should put it up on our screens. Read the second time?
Can we put it
Yes.
on the screens?
Yeah, if council gives me a few minutes, I can open a Word document and type that out. This is just to give the OCP bylaw a third reading. It was read a second time on the 27th of May, and that was the subject of the public hearing tonight.
Yeah. This is the OCP. And
Could we do the other 2 first?
Sure, there's not been a seconder, so...
Yeah, I'd like to call the zoning bylaw amendments. That's to move from a 1.75 to 2 FSR. Could we do those 2 first, please?
Okay, so we do those 2 first? That's okay. Okay, so we'll start with zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5338, 2024 be read a second time.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lambert. Any discussion? Councillor Cassidy.
Yes, I think for those individuals who are listening from home and those who are here, we need to give some degree of clarity is exactly what we are doing tonight. I mean, it seems to me we're just doing something off the cuff. So I would like to see it on the screen. This is it's not a big deal in the sense, but of the
Councillor
entire
Cassidy,
equation.
we're more than happy to put it on the screen.
Please, thank you.
Well, and on that note, I don't think that the motion itself really speaks to what we're doing. So if you want more clarity in that.
I think the public would like more clarity. Thank you.
This is to pass the zoning bylaw that increases the FSR from 1.75 to 2 on all the buildings to cure the problem of balcony enclosures and other space. And there was only one person tonight who spoke to that issue at the public hearing, and they were in favor. And we're going to share that motion now. Thank you. Councillor Thompson? You've made the motion. Councillor Lambert seconded the motion. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Lambert?
Just very briefly. I mean, I think apart from being a housekeeping measure, what this does do is that it enables the conversion of community or common area space in buildings to units, to additional housing units. And I did one of the first, probably the first one in West Van in the Navijack West, where the owners of that strata building, it wasn't a rental building, came up with the idea of converting some ground floor space into a new unit, which could then be sold, and they used the income from that unit to completely refurbish the building. And it was a very successful proposition. But at the time, we were up against the 1.75 FAR limit, and the building was very close to that. We were literally within square feet of being able to qualify under that. Other buildings that I worked on subsequently weren't as fortunate, so this gives some breathing space for those buildings to be able to do that, to add housing and to generate funds to refurbish their buildings.
It also, just for clarification, there are a number of buildings in West Vancouver, for example, the C Strand, where people have enclosed their balconies, and then other people have gone wanting to do the same thing, but they have discovered that the FSR has all been taken up by their neighbors, and they can't enclose their balconies. So it's created an inequity in a lot of buildings. This simply cleans up a very historic problem. Frankly, it should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah. I think this also applies to the woman who spoke about they're trying to just change their windows. And you're recommending rather than go for a variance, they just wait till this is changed. And imagine,
This
so
will
it's just common sense.
save our staff a lot of time.
So you want to call the vote?
I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Contrary, the motion is carried. Could we have third reading?
Then third reading, zoning bylaw 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5338, 2024 be read a third time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Snyder. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you. The official community plan.
And the official community plan bylaw number 4985, and this is so we can make the amendments to the official community plan. 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5291, 2024 be read for a third time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Snyder. Discussion. Councillor Lambert.
Excuse me. I don't quite understand what Councillor Thompson just said, so it's so that we can consider, we're considering the amendments that have been put forward so far. We're not considering amendments to the amendments.
My recommendation to members of council, and I think it picks up on Councillor Cassidy's comments, is that we really should table this off for a week or until our next meeting so that we can itemize whatever amendments may be considered. I think that's the wise thing to do. We've had a lot of input tonight. It's late, and I think to avoid any confusion, we'd be well pressed to adjourn this until our July 8th meeting.
So, my understanding,
If we look at the time, and this is something that's of very significant importance to the community, I honestly don't see any harm in waiting until July 8th. If there's to be any amendments made by members of council, it gives us time to do that and to have a discussion. Or at least present them so that the public knows what you're proposing as amendments.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor Sager, you know, if we're to go ahead with doing this now, we're doing it on the fly.
Right.
And I think that we need a little bit of time, that if we want to propose amendments and know which amendments are eligible, in fact, for being considered, we should take the bit of time to do that.
I think that's the wise thing to do. And so I would ask for a motion to table this until the July 8th meeting. That's moved by Councillor Lambert, seconded by Councillor Thompson. I'll call the question. There's no discussion on a tabling motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. And now we'll go to the balance of the consent agenda items. Well, it's just the community awards, I think, is the last item. Sorry, Councillor Cassidy.
clarity because of the hour of the evening,
Yes.
just to let the public know that the only thing we have done so far essentially has gone from 1.75 to 2 FAR, which is enclosing the balconies.
Yes.
Just so they're aware of that.
Yes, that's
Nothing
right.
more major than
Nothing
that.
else. Yes, that was the motion, and I can tell you from the number of calls I've gotten, there'll be a lot of very relieved people in the community. A lot of people with building permits for the kitchen renovations held up, and there will be relief. So, we have the Community Awards and Recognition Program. Councillor Thompson, do you want to just read that out?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I know it's late, but these are community award recipients and very worthy of having their name mentioned. So we had 4 categories, and 5 actually, but the arts and culture, we had the Harlequin Theatre Society receive an award, and Nancy Farron. Community commitments, we had Susie Alexander from the Horseshoe Bay Business Association and a variety of other roles she holds. Troy Baker, Jeff Jobson for Place of Sport and his other community service. Troy Baker was a fellow who helped rescue a gentleman from a burning building, along with another fellow named Robert Allen Macbeth. Dirk Meyer was recognized for his work with the SPCA, I believe, and Masoom Price, community commitment, and also the Rotary Club of West Vancouver Sunrise received an award, and they've been doing, they do an annual ride that raises over $100,000 for North Shore Search and Rescue, as well as do quite a variety of other social services within our community. In the category of environment, we had Phil Munday from the Nature House Committee, and then Jane Chereau and Douglas Strong. Health and wellness, we had Krista Bourguignon, and of course our West Vancouver Fit Fellas, and that was it. It was a wonderful evening.
Thank you. I very much appreciate you covering that, and I hear you did a wonderful job as the MC.
Thank you.
Could you just make the recommended motion?
For this, recommend that the report dated June 14th, 2024, from the Cultural Services Manager, titled 2024 Community Awards Recognition Program Recipients to be received for information.
And Councillor Watt. Thanks very much. No discussion. I'll call a question. All in favor? Contrary carried. There is a notice of motion, and again, for members of the public, we have encouraged members of council to bring forward things that they feel strongly about. As we saw earlier tonight, and Councillor Lambert and Thompson are bringing forward a proposed motion on short-term rental accommodation that will be considered at our July 8th meeting. And I'll just ask if there are any members of the public. I'm thinking, just given the hour, if there are any reports from mayor and council, perhaps they could wait. Sorry, Councillor Cassidy.
Want to do 10.1?
The wastewater.
Oh, gosh. Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Councillor Cassidy, would you make a motion on the North Shore wastewater treatment?
Yes,
Gosh,
thank you.
A bit of an important subject.
Recommended that council authorizes the mayor to file a dispute with Metro Vancouver regarding the North Shore wastewater treatment plant.
Thanks for catching that. Thank you, Councillor Watt.
I am very happy to second that.
Thank you. There'll be much more discussion on this, and I'm going to share some thoughts, but it's late tonight, so we'll wait. I'll call a question. All in favor? Contrary carried, and that action is consistent with our North Shore friends on the North Shore, the City and District of North Van. Are there any public questions this evening? And seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gambioli. I'll call a question. All in favor? Contrary carried. Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you for everybody's patience as we got through that. And again, Councillor Snyder, happy birthday.